Piper sobbed softly out in the middle of the woods. It was all too much to handle nowadays. It was time to leave her home pack here in Montana. She could no longer take the pain of his betrayal anymore. Not that her Alpha Bradley of the Black Haven pack, knew that it hurt her every time that he was with another. He had no idea who she was to him. She, however, had sent him out 3 years ago, at the age of 18. On the first full moon after her 18th birthday. Had felt pain almost instantly, and not because he'd been with another at the time, but because he'd not scented her, not recognized her as his mate. He had bumped right into her that day even. Piper and her wolf Harper were more than nervous, tracking his perfect woodsy scent through the pack house. It had a hint of blackberry, had led them all the way to him. She had been standing right behind him, only half a foot away. He was taller than she was by a long way. He stood 6'4" and was all muscled up. He'd been wearing faded blue jeans and a dark purple t-shirt that day. His dark brown hair had been a little messy. Alpha Bradley had been talking on his phone that day, and when he had turned around, had run right into her. His deep blue eyes with those flecks of green in them had turned right on her, and then he'd frowned right down at her. She was only 5'6". He towered over her. There had been no recognition in his eyes at all. "Don't stand so close, girl," he casually stated, and then had stepped around her and just walked away from her, and her heart had broken. Harper had howled in pain inside of her mind. They'd known what he was to them, but he had no idea. It was what she and her wolf had always feared, all her life, even after gaining Harper, even since she was little, had lost her parents to a rogue attack at the age of 10, and no one here seemed to notice her after her parents' death. No one seemed to know who she was. It was like she just didn't exist. That had been her life, though she had attended school here in the pack's small K-1 to year 12 school, and had graduated with good marks. People were always bumping into her and telling her to watch her step. No one knew she was there, invisible to the entire pack is what it felt like, unless someone was looking directly at her, and she knew why. She had no scent. Though she could smell every one of them, no one could smell her. She had gotten a job and worked long, quiet hours, tucked away in the back room of a dressmaking store inside the pack. She'd loved to learn how to design and create beautiful dresses. Even a lot of the pack's she-wolves wore her dresses to the pack's events and mating balls, to their 16th and 18th birthday celebrations. She, however, did not. She lived alone away from the pack, out in a tiny cabin away from everyone, so that they would not hear her sobs and distress as she put up with the pains of betrayal. The first time she had felt him with another, she and Harper had howled in pain and run away deep into the woods, found that tiny cabin no longer in use, and curled up into a ball had stayed there in agony till he'd stopped being with another. Then had just stayed there for a whole day, unable to go back to the pack. Their pain would have been for all to see if anyone saw her. That was. There was nothing they could do about it. It had hurt like nothing she'd ever felt before, and continued to do so right to this day, and to hide their pains they had hidden themselves away, unable to tell him what he was to them. She knew he would never believe her. Only if he scented her out would he recognize her as his mate. She and Harper both knew this, and they both knew he was never going to be able to do that either. The pains were worse when he was away from the pack, mating some other she-wolf in another pack. Did not hurt her any less than the one she-wolf here in the pack he bedded on a regular basis. 3 long years she'd had to suffer now, 3 long years she'd walked the halls of the pack house, came across him, and not once did he pay her the slightest bit of attention, and when he did bump into her, as did so many others, because they couldn't smell that she was right there, he would just frown down at her, either apologize or ask her to move out of the way, and just move on. Had occasionally snapped at her, all angry to watch where the hell she was going. For 2 years she slipped into his bedroom when he wasn't here in the pack, looked at his things, touched his clothes, felt hot tears slide down her cheeks for the man that was her mate. The man that had never once scented her out. The man that she and Harper loved, but would never love them. Had even slept curled up in his bed, not that he'd ever known it. No scent of her remained. She could wander at will anywhere she liked, left no trail at all. Had even sat in his Alpha's chair once, touched his desk and wondered what it would be like to be his Luna. Tonight, he had been with another, she knew who. He had one regular girl here inside the pack, Bianca. She was older, like he was, a warrior, highly ranked. She'd seen them together chatting and flirting on occasion. Seen the way he looked at her body, even that hurt too. He desired Bianca. She was tall and very fit, all muscle. He liked that about her. Piper had once been fit like that, not tall but very fit, and had been strong too. But the past 3 years had drained her. She was thin now, always had dark circles under her eyes, and looked quite frail. The small amount of joy she had taken from training as a warrior to try and make her parents proud, they had been warriors, that joy of being a good fighter, not that she had been old enough to go out and fight, had dwindled to nothing once she'd turned 18. She was barely a shell of her former self now. She stayed away from all pack events, just worked in the small back room of the store, surrounded by materials and designs to be created. Orders to be filled. Her only solace, that she could create something so beautiful amidst her own misery. Harper was a ball of sadness and pain. They could not take any more. They had to leave. It was killing them, and she knew it. Bradley was going away on some alpha meeting or some pack business in just 2 days, and so that is when she was going to say goodbye and leave. She had no idea if she could reject her mate without him being there or knowing what she was to him for that matter. But that was what she was going to do, had to try it anyway. It was all they could do. Piper figured if he had no idea who she was for the past 3 years, then why would he need to be there to hear her rejection? It was likely only going to cause her pain anyway. He would feel nothing because he knew nothing. Then once the full moon came and went after that rejection, surely it would be official and severed completely by the moon goddess herself, or at least she was hoping that's how it worked. She and Harper had put themselves in front of him many times. They had no choice left to them. They were nothing to him, never would be, and they knew it. 3 full years and nothing, not once had he so much as twitched a nose at her presence. So, no more would she put herself or her wolf through that. They had enough money saved up to go out into the human world and make a living for themselves. She had good skills in fashion and design. Though she mostly made dresses, there were millions of humans in need of wedding dresses. The equivalent to a Luna ceremony gown. Spent the next 2 days in the pack house library, looking at places she could go, her mind made up. She was not even going to look at him one last time. There was no point. Sat at a computer, one hand on the mouse, scrolling through places that were well away from the pack, away from forests and where packs could well be. She may be a wolf, but didn't feel like one, was just invisible mostly. Her other hand was on the blue azure crystal pendulum drop necklace that hung around her neck. It had a white gold chain that was fine and felt warm against her skin all the time, and had white gold casing to hold the crystal itself and a smaller blue azure crystal ball right above the casing that attached to the chain. It had been her mother's. She told her that one day she would get her daughter one too, a gift for her 16th birthday, and they would have matching mother-daughter jewelry. But Piper had only been 10 when she had lost both her parents. She'd never taken it off. It was the only thing she had left of her, had found it on her body when the attack had been over and had retrieved it as her only heirloom. She and Harper were at the point where they might as well live as human. No wolf would ever smell her, and she would remain mateless from the moment she rejected him. They were already resigned to that fact. Found a nice city several states away. Harper didn't care that there was no forest nearby. She had not shifted to her wolf in over a year now, couldn't it seemed, or perhaps just no longer wanted to. So she was fine with the city, didn't want to be in the woods, didn't want to run and be free, didn't seem to care at all anymore about being a wolf herself. Found and booked a flight out there, a hotel for somewhere to stay while they found a small apartment and sorted out their business that they were going to create. They would die and wither away no more. They would become strong from this. Live a human life from now on. Then they went back to their cabin in the woods by the southern border of the pack, and had just stayed there. They could see the pack's gates with the use of a set of binoculars from the roof of her cabin. Sat and watched and waited for his car to leave, not that hard to spot. It was white, unlike most of the other pack cars that were black or silver. He drove a white Mercedes SUV. Saw it leave. And grabbed her hiking backpack. It was full of her belongings. Living a simple life meant not much to pack. Her whole life fitted in that one backpack. It was large and designed to be used for long hiking trips, but even with her small, weakened stature, she could manage it. Walked through the woods until the pack house came into view, sighed heavily and headed for it. Today was the day she was leaving. No one would even notice she was gone because they didn't even know she existed. Only those who came into the store to buy one of her dresses maybe wonder where she had gone. At Renee's store, Haven Gowns. Though Renee had always claimed them as her dresses, told Piper she was the store owner, so this was how it was. Piper's name was on the labels of all her dresses though. Renee never minded about that, and she did pay Piper well. Not that anyone ever asked who Piper was or asked to meet her. Walked into the pack house and right up the main set of stairs, to the very top floor. No one stopped her, placed her backpack down the hall and around near the Omega stairs that she would use to leave. It was out of sight and no Omegas would be up here at this time of the night. All their work done for the day. Only the Alpha unit lived in this part of the pack house, and they were all off with the Alpha. Walked down to his suite and let herself in. It was clean and smelled like him. Fresh pine with eucalyptus and that hint of blackberries. Walked about one last time. A glutton for punishment, she knew. Should have just left already, but couldn't not without one last scent of him. Walked into his walk-in and touched all his clothes, slid her hand along them all, touched everything, couldn't help herself. As much as it pained her and Harper, they were still drawn to him. Likely always would be. Leaving was simply self-preservation, and if her rejection did not hold, they'd likely not survive much longer anyway. Walked over and stood looking down at his bed. One last night here in his bed and then gone. At the brink of dawn. That was the plan. He'd be gone for several days, always was. The first night away was usually peaceful, but not the nights after that. Stripped off all her clothes and got into his bed. Grabbed onto the pillow that smelled the most like him and buried her face into it, let the tears fall one last time. Fell asleep in the middle of his big king-sized bed, wrapped in his scent, in the very sheets that would touch his skin while he slept, allowed herself to dream it was where she belonged one last time. Woke with a start. It was still dark, then there was the sound of the bedroom door banging closed. She bit her lip, heard movement, and then the sound of clothing being removed. She could smell him. Bradley was back. He could not smell her, had not realized she was in here, in his very bed, and hadn't even turned the lights on. She was very small at 5'6", and was now so thin that she likely didn't even make a small lump in his bed beneath the thick plush feather-down comforter. She felt him get into the bed and prayed he'd stay on that side, that she would be able to slip out once he was asleep. The punishment for this kind of thing, being in his bed, would likely be terrible. And he would be the one to dish it out. She did not relish the thought of getting a beating, a whipping, or being thrown into the cells afterwards by her own mate. It would likely destroy them completely. Why was he back? She felt his hand brush against her back, and then a large angry growl came from him. He knew there was someone in his bed. He was well within his rights to kill an intruder, and she and Harper both knew it. Wondered if he'd even feel the disconnection afterwards, though she doubted it. Then his body shifted closer. "Well, I guess you wanted some time with your Alpha." His voice was low and tired as he mistook her presence for someone else's. He rested a hand lightly against her side before pausing. Piper had no idea what to do. No one had ever paid her the slightest bit of attention. No one had ever touched her, and now he was. Something she had never thought would happen. He hesitated for a long moment before gently turning her toward him. In the darkness, he couldn't make out her face, only that someone was there beside him. "You feel warm," he muttered with a weary sigh, clearly exhausted from the day. Piper's heart pounded painfully in her chest. Every instinct told her to speak, to tell him who she was, but the words refused to come. She had dreamed of being close to him for 3 years, and now that impossible dream had become reality under the worst possible circumstances. Bradley wrapped an arm around her without another word, believing she had come willingly to keep him company after a difficult day. His breathing gradually slowed. For a few brief moments, Piper allowed herself to imagine this was where she belonged. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears as she rested against him. Harper whimpered quietly inside her mind, torn between happiness at finally being close to their mate and agony that he still had no idea who she was. "I needed this," he murmured sleepily. Piper's heart shattered. Not because of what he'd said, but because he still hadn't recognized her. Within minutes his breathing evened out. He had fallen asleep. Piper remained perfectly still, tears silently slipping down her cheeks. Even now, even holding her, he did not know she was his mate. Carefully, she eased herself out from beneath his arm. Every movement was slow and deliberate, terrified of waking him. She picked up her clothes and quietly dressed, never taking her eyes off him. At least she'd gotten to be close to him, if only for a few fleeting moments. Stepped away from the bed, from him, closed her eyes and tried to stop the flow of tears. Pulled on her clothes, turned from the bedroom doorway, looked at his sleeping body, pain seared through her and her wolf. They would never survive his betrayal again, not after this. They both knew it, and they knew he would go off and be with someone else again. They were nothing to him, never had been, and without a scent for him to smell, they never would be. Took a long silent breath in. "I, Piper Whitlock, warrior to the Black Haven Pack, reject you, Bradley Drake, as my mate," she whispered into the darkness of the room. Then she fled as fast as she could as pain coursed through her body. Harper howled in agony inside her mind. They ran from his suite, down the hall, grabbed their bag and stumbled, nearly falling most of the way down the stairs to the door at the bottom, struggling with the pain of their rejection. Refused to stop regardless of the pain. They had been through a lot of pain in the past 3 years. They knew how to run and hold it in, to hide it until they were alone. Didn't stop running until they reached the western border of the pack. She knew she looked a terrible mess, tears streaming down her face, and she'd stumbled and fallen many times as pain tore at her insides, but had picked herself up and kept going. Was still sobbing from the pain she was still in. Looked at the patrolman. He was frowning right at her, had no idea where she had come from, or who she was. Hadn't scented her coming, would have heard her, but even now she could tell he was confused as to what she was. Stepped out over the border right into rogue territory. Saw him step towards her, his eyes widening at her actions. Not many females would do what she was doing. "I reject Alpha Bradley Drake and his pack, the Black Haven Pack, as my pack. I am a rogue now," she'd stated firmly, her decision clear in her mind. Heard the border patrolman gasp in shock. Then she turned and ran from everything and everyone she'd ever known as she felt herself sever from the pack entirely. It was the only thing that could save her and Harper. They would die here if they had to stay and suffer any longer. They were not afraid to be out in rogue territory. Had been out here before. Not even a rogue picked up her wolfen scent. She was a mere human to them as well. So a human they would be from now on. They would live, breathe, eat and work as a human would, in the human world. Made their way to the airport to catch their flight and start over. A wolf no more. Chapter 1. Piper POV. Piper stood in her bridal shop window, pinning the dress to the mannequin to make it a neat fit and look its best to attract customers. Not that she was short of them. Made her smile. Her designs were well liked even here in the human world. It was a lovely strapless A-line gown, a blush-colored dress with a square neckline, the skirt flowed freely, and it had a bodice covered in hand-embroidered crystal beads. It had a pulled-up, neatly pleated section at the front of the dress that allowed all the wonderful soft ruffles of the overlapping layers of the soft satin material to be seen. She did like it. Had just finished it yesterday. Her store, Goddess Gowns here in Portland, was one of 3 she now owned. Her main store where she worked from, it had a nice space, was in a 2-story building where all her gowns were on display downstairs, with a spacious sitting area and plush seating. There was a small runway from the dressing rooms out into the center of the store, where the waiting guests would sit and watch the bride-to-be show off the dress she chose. Her office was upstairs in a loft space. She'd had split into 2 large rooms, her office in the first space and her working studio where she sat and created her gowns. She was good at her job. Liked her work and had sold made dresses to wealthy humans as well as regular humans. She catered to all. kept to herself as much as possible, but did hold and attend fashion shows, was quite well known in the bridal industry. She stepped back and looked at her latest creation, adjusted it a couple of times, until she was happy with it. Heard the pretty bell she'd bought tinkle as the store's door opened to let someone in. Most days they came by appointment, but Tuesday she kept open for walk-ins. Her books were pretty full at the moment. Izzy would likely show them around or make them an appointment to see her at some point in the future. Then the scent hit her. They were wolves. Inside her store were werewolves. Felt Harper growl a little inside of her mind, though they had come across wolves and all other manner of creatures over the past 8 years. Today the scent that hit them, reached their nose, was one that particularly annoyed them. Without even turning to look, she could hear the woman who was laughing and happy, excited to be in this very store, to purchase her gown for her ceremony, as she called it. Heard the man chuckle and remind her that Brad had told her to get whatever she wanted. He did not care about the cost it would incur him. Piper stepped out from the window display and refused to even look at them, knew by the pack scent that was on them, they were of her old pack. Likely from the way the woman was talking, this woman was here to purchase a goddess gown designed by Piper Harper Designs, to wear to her Luna ceremony and to none other than to Bradley Drake himself. "Izzy, please attend to the customers," she stated flatly as she headed up the stairs to her office. "Yes, Piper," she heard Izzy call after her. Piper nor Harper wanted to be anywhere near that woman or her escort for that matter. Pain was already pulling at them both. He'd found another, it seemed. No, not found another. Had scented out his first mate. She, though bitterly. He'd never once scented her, but obviously had that woman downstairs in her very store. She and Harper might have left out of self-preservation, but it didn't mean they didn't still love the man. Knew their rejection had worked, seeing as not once since that night had she felt the pains of betrayal. It had been the right thing to do, saved both her and Harper. They'd moved well away from that pack, even several states away in fact. Why were they here in her store? This was the first time they had come across the Black Haven pack since they had left. Why of all places would that woman come all the way here to her store? Was it just some cruel joke? She already felt like Selena had rejected her and Harper, cursed them and given her life of asterisk, but no, that wasn't enough it seemed. Now her mate had his own mate and was here to dump pain on her once again. Heard a knock on her door. "Piper, sorry to bother you. The young lady downstairs wants one of your older gowns." "I don't make those anymore," Piper replied calmly. "Just tell her to buy one off of the racks downstairs. I'm sure there is something she will like. I don't have the time to make something new right now, even from the old." "Yes, Piper? Are you all right, Piper?" Izzy asked her with a slight frown. "I'm fine, Izzy. Have a headache is all." She waved the girl away. "Close my door. I can't stand the smell," she stated, not wanting to smell them or even hear the conversation those two down there may have. And to hell if that escort or the girl heard her comment about the smell. Glanced at the large wall clock inside. Hopefully they would leave soon. She had to go and get Brandon from the bus stop in a little while. Did not want that man around her son, period. Not that he would connect any dots. She did not smell to that wolf downstairs, and any likeness to Bradley would simply be shrugged off. Heard a knock on her door a few minutes later, and was about to raise her voice to Izzy for disturbing her yet again. She'd been given instructions already. When the door opened without her stating "come in," looked to it, a deep frown on her face. Her jaw tightened as she was Cooper opened the door to her office without permission. Cooper, the beta to Black Haven pack. He stood there in her office doorway, smiled right at her, all charmingly, thought he was going to be able to use his good looks and charm to be able to sway her into whatever he wanted. Most human females would be drooling already at his black hair and deeply dark charcoal gray eyes, his chiseled jaw and well-built physique. Little did this wolf know, she wasn't some gullible human out for the charming. She was not going to fall at his feet and stare up at him all dreamy-eyed and become so smitten that she'd do whatever he wanted her to. It was likely how he'd gotten past Izzy, though. Had used those stormy gray eyes of his and by the look of it had run his hand through his hair, which would have showed off the muscles in his arm. He was only wearing a short-sleeved, very well-fitted t-shirt and those sickeningly perfectly pearly white teeth of his. That he had turned on her now. He was a picture of charm and asterisk appeal. He was definitely trying to play on his good looks to get what he wanted. She was not attracted to him in the slightest. "Hello, I'm Cooper." Piper cut him right off there. "I don't care." "Get out," she snapped at him, did not want this wolf anywhere near her at all. Saw his smile actually falter and frown at her. "That's not a very nice way to treat a potential customer. I have a friend here who would." "I don't care." She cut him off once again. "I already told my store manager, Izzy. I don't have time to make a dress from an old obsolete line." Turned her eyes away from him, back to her desk and the design pad in front of her, effectively dismissing him. He would understand that, likely seen his alpha do it many times. Hell, he'd probably done it himself a heap. "Please," she heard him actually step inside of her office. "We'll pay whatever you want." Turned her eyes back to him, more than annoyed now, trying to use money to get what he wants. Now he understood his looks wouldn't do it. Typical. "I don't need your money. Now I am very busy, Carter." Was it? "Have your friend choose something in the store downstairs." It was Cooper. He grated out, sounded like he didn't like her tone. Well, she didn't like him in her office any more than he looked like. He wanted to be in here right now. She was ticking the man off, it seemed. Good. Maybe he'd take that woman and leave altogether. "My friend wants a custom Piper Harper gown." Rolled her eyes right at him. Whose store did he think he was in? Everything downstairs is a Piper Harper gown. She dripped sarcasm at his stupidly spoken request. "You are very rude." He glared right at her. Oh, this was not rude, this was just annoyed. He didn't want to see her fully pissed off. And she was doing everything to get him out of her store with the attitude of not coming back at all. Saw him actually take a breath and try to calm his anger. His wolf must be cranky at the lack of respect she was showing. Heard Harper snort, amused inside her mind. They'd not even really gotten started. "Please, at least look at the picture of the dress she wants." Turned slightly. "Hadley, come in here and show the lady the dress you want," he called to her. Piper's jaw tightened all the way, so much so she could hear her own teeth grinding against each other. Saw him look right at her. He had picked up on it too. They did not want to know the woman's name, and certainly did not want to have to look right at her for that matter. It was why she had come upstairs and asked Izzy to deal with them. On any other given day in her store, Piper would have been more than willing and happy to stay downstairs and assist in her store. Her customers liked to meet her. She knew this and, for the most part, didn't actually mind interacting with them. Only the super prima donnas annoyed her, whining little spoiled babies that had never heard the word no before, irritated her and Harper for that matter. She was glaring right at him now, and actually saw him try and smell her. Interesting response to her anger. He clearly wasn't used to humans challenging him or standing up to him. A very pretty red-headed girl walked into her office a moment later. Obviously not her real hair color, it was as red as a fire truck. The girl, not woman, was young, likely only barely 18 or 19. She smiled right at Piper, had deep dark blue-colored eyes. She had that trim, taut, and terrific body that all wolves had, was wearing a well-fitted dress that accentuated her breasts and hips, drew one's eyes right to how fit she actually was. Just his type, she thought bitterly. It did not escape her or Harper that she scented of alpha blood either. Did not smile at Hadley, she'd been called. Already initiated into the pack, had the pack's scent on her as well. Saw the girl falter as Piper's eyes met hers, fully annoyed and angered to have to be looking right at her. Saw Cooper bring her further into the office. "I'm sure she won't bite, Hadley." It was a warning. She and Harper had not missed his tone at all. "Show her the dress you want. I'm certain I will be able to convince her to make it." "Fat chance." Harper snarled inside her mind. Watched him walk Hadley across the office and sit her down opposite to Piper herself. Glared right at him. He was lucky Harper was still inside of her at this point and not fully on the surface. And oh yes, he was very used to getting his way all the time. And of course, whatever the Luna wanted, she would get. He was here to make sure of that. Well, today he was going to find out that he couldn't have everything he wanted. She was no pushover. Yes, every other Luna out there got what they wanted. She and Harper hated Lunas almost with a passion, almost as much as they hated their own kind. Piper, she felt his aura roll at her, just a little. Likely trying to make her complaint, please, it is Hadley's wish. And I told you, I'm busy and don't have the time, she shot back at him, making sure he understood his aura meant nothing to her. Look at it, he practically demanded her. Well, they were no longer a part of his pack anymore. Rogues didn't have masters, didn't have to answer to anyone unless they actually chose to. Raised an eyebrow up at him. I don't like your attitude, she snapped and stood up, felt Harper bristle inside her own mind. They would be no match for him, but they were not about to let him lord it over them right here in their office. Nor I yours, he snapped right back, watched him pluck the photo from the girl's hand. What harm will come from looking at it? He held it out to her. Nothing, I suppose. She grated out and yanked the damn thing from his hand. It was actually a magazine clipping, not a photo, and the moment her eyes landed on it, her anger twitched up a notch. She had only made one of these, had tortured herself with it. It was the very dress she had designed for herself, the one that she had always imagined she would wear, the one she had designed long before she'd left the pack, tormented herself with dreams of Bradley scenting her and claiming her. And that dress being the one she would wear for her Luna ceremony. Never happened, never would. There was one thing Piper was certain of, this girl before her was never going to wear that dress. She would never make it for her to wear to her ceremony to Bradley. Tore the clipping in half, and then in half again. I will not make that, she spat as she tossed the torn pieces of paper into bin. Heard the girl gasp and actually sob, then shot up out of the chair and left the room in a rush. Saw Cooper go after her. Go and don't come back, she practically snarled right at him. Saw him stop and glare right at her, stand there and stare at her, right at her. She was not intimidated by him, and it surprised him. Shocked him that he couldn't seem to frighten her. Saw him breath in again. He was once again trying to figure out what she was? Why she'd not done what he wanted. Well, he would smell nothing, like every other time he'd walked past her or ran into her, and he had more than once. He would smell a human and nothing more if he even smelled that. Stood in her office doorway staring right at her as she stared right back at him, locked eyes right with him. Her brown eyes never moved from him. Saw a slight smirk touch his lips. She presented a challenge to him, and his wolf it seemed. Saw his wolf's eyes appear as it pushed forward. It was likely meant to frighten her. All he got from her was a raised eyebrow at him. You don't frighten me. Get out of my store, she stated, never moved her eyes from his wolf's. Registered shock on his face at her lack of reaction to his wolf on the surface. Then he just turned and left. Yes, go away and don't bloody come back, she muttered to herself. Knew his keen sense of hearing would pick it up. Didn't care at all. Wanted him to know that she didn't want him to come back. Glanced at the clock and sighed. Heard the bell ding. He'd left the store. Poured herself a glass of water and drank it. Today was not a good day. Today was not something she had ever seen coming or even been prepared for. Walked down the stairs, saw Izzy's eyes on her questioningly. I'm going to pick up Brandon. Yes, Piper, she just nodded. Walked outside her store and found Cooper across the street with the girl, and as she glanced at them realized the packs Gamma and Delta were also both there. The Gamma looked right at her as the girl was hugged into him, taking comfort from her Gamma. Oh, how sweet. She, though bitterly, turned and walked off down the street. 3 blocks to the bus stop and waited. She'd survived more than that. All that girl got was a no, was a spoiled blood prima donna. Watched as Brandon got off the bus and smiled at him. Thankfully, he had her caramel-colored hair with a few natural blonde highlights from the sun. And his skin was fair like hers too, though he did have his father's blue eyes with those green flecks in them. He was her one true joy in her life. Smiled right at him as he stood talking to his friends, would not interrupt the boy. He had people hanging off him, just 7 years old and already popular, typical of his alpha genes, she supposed. Finally, he turned his smile on her. Hey, Mum. Hey, sweetie, I thought we'd go and get waffles. Saw him grin now. Sure, she knew it was his favorite thing. Loved waffles with strawberries and doused in hot melted chocolate with a big scoop of chocolate ice cream. Took his hand and strolled along to the cafe they ate at sometimes after school. Watched him eat happily. I thought we could get away, go on a little holiday. The long weekend is coming. He looked right at her. No work. Piper chuckled, even heard Harper chortle inside her mind. No work. Why don't we go snowboarding? Sweet. He grinned now all excited. The boy did like to be in the outdoors, and he learned to snowboard at 5. Bloody took to everything that he tried. His natural agility shone through, as did his track and field, even excelled at swimming. Everything he did was a natural talent at It's fall, he suddenly stated. It's snowing somewhere in the world, she shrugged. Get your phone out and find somewhere. We'll leave Friday after school and come back Monday. You pick where. Saw him stop and glare right at her, stand there and stare at her, right at her. She was not intimidated by him, and it surprised him. Shocked him that he couldn't seem to frighten her, saw him breath in again. He was once again trying to figure out what she was? Why she'd not done what he wanted. Well, he would smell nothing, like every other time he'd walked past her or ran into her, and he had more than once. He would smell a human and nothing more if he even smelled that. Stood in her office doorway staring right at her as she stared right back at him, locked eyes right with him. Her brown eyes never moved from him, saw a slight smirk touch his lips. She presented a challenge to him, and his wolf it seemed. Saw his wolf's eyes appear as it pushed forward. It was likely meant to frighten her. All he got from her was a raised eyebrow at him. You don't frighten me. Get out of my store, she stated, never moved her eyes from his wolf's. Registered shock on his face at her lack of reaction to his wolf on the surface. Then he just turned and left. Yes, go away and don't bloody come back, she muttered to herself. Knew his keen sense of hearing would pick it up. Didn't care at all. Wanted him to know that she didn't want him to come back. Glanced at the clock inside, heard the bell ding. He'd left the store, poured herself a glass of water and drank it. Today was not a good day. Today was not something she had ever seen coming or even been prepared for. Walked down the stairs, saw Izzy's eyes on her questioningly. I'm going to pick up Brandon. Yes, Piper, she just nodded. Walked outside her store and found Cooper across the street with the girl, and as she glanced at them realized the Pax Gamma and Delta were also both there. The Gamma looked right at her as the girl was hugged into him, taking comfort from her Gamma. Oh, how sweet. She, though bitterly, turned and walked off down the street. 3 blocks to the bus stop and waited. She'd survived more than that. All that girl got was a no, was a spoiled blood prima donna. Watched as Brandon got off the bus and smiled at him. Thankfully, he had her caramel-colored hair with a few natural blonde highlights from the sun. And his skin was fair like hers too, though he did have his father's blue eyes with those green flecks in them. He was her one true joy in her life. Smiled right at him as he stood talking to his friends, would not interrupt the boy. He had people hanging off him, just 7 years old and already popular, typical of his alpha genes, she supposed. Finally, he turned his smile on her. Hey, Mum. Hey, sweetie, I thought we'd go and get waffles. Saw him grin now, sure. She knew it was his favorite thing. Loved waffles with strawberries and doused in hot melted chocolate with a big scoop of chocolate ice cream. Took his hand and strolled along to the cafe they ate at sometimes after school. Watched him eat happily. I thought we could get away. Go on a little holiday. The long weekend is coming. He looked right at her. No work. Piper chuckled, even heard Harper chortle inside her mind. No work. Why don't we go snowboarding? Sweet. He grinned now all excited. The boy did like to be in the outdoors, and he learned to snowboard at 5. Bloody took to everything that he tried. His natural agility shone through, as did his track and field, even excelled at swimming. Everything he did was a natural talent at It's fall, he suddenly stated. It's snowing somewhere in the world, she shrugged. Get your phone out and find somewhere. We'll leave Friday after school and come back Monday. You pick where. Chapter 2. Piper POV. Suitcases were all packed and downstairs by the store's counter. They were all ready for their long weekend away to Whistler. She had booked a 2-bedroom panorama suite at the Four Seasons Resort. The flight from Portland was also booked, and a car would be picking them up from the store to transport them to the airport, as there would be one waiting on them at the airport when they landed. It was actually really nice to be getting away and just take time out and relax, snowboard with Brandon all weekend. He'd been so excited for the trip over the last 2 days, already had written out what he wanted to do on their downtime and what runs he wanted to snowboard on. Piper was in her studio. It was Friday midday, and she'd not seen any wolves in the past 3 days, since her run-in with Cooper, obviously upsetting that girl, had made her want to go somewhere else to get her Luna's gown. Which suited not just Piper but Harper as well. They were not going to make a gown for their former alpha's mate. No way in hell. She was sewing crystals to the bodice of a strapless gown designed by her for a wealthy heiress, was sitting with a container of those crystal beads next to her, and the ivory-colored gown was laid across her lap. Lifted he head up at the sound of her store's front door banging open and then shut. Frowned at the sound of her bell crashing around like crazy. Heard her name be stated by a very angry-sounding man. Sighed heavily. It was likely the Whitmore girl's father. She'd had to delay his daughter's dress fitting this weekend, pushed it to next weekend, and the girl had pitched a fit and thrown a tantrum like a 2-year-old, then yelled at her it was unacceptable. And she was going to tell her father. It wasn't unacceptable at all. The girl's wedding was not for another 4 months, and this was the last fitting. Then she could pick up the dress the following weekend if she had alterations, which Piper was certain she would. Had every other time she'd had a fitting. Stood up, knew by the sound of the angry footsteps on the stairs and the lighter ones following. The man and his prima donna of a daughter were on their way up the stairs to likely tear strips off of her. Hung the dress she was working on back on the mannequin and brushed it out to straighten it. This was the only part of her job that she did not enjoy, dealing with wealthy aristocrat people who believed the world revolved around them, just like alpha wolves they were, lording their power over everyone and trying to make people do what they want. Annoying to say the least. Turned as the door to her studio banged open and stopped dead at the sight before her. Bradley Drake himself stood there in the doorway, dressed in dark gray slacks and a dark blue long-sleeved dress shirt. His blue eyes and their green flecks practically glowing with anger and directed solely on her. Felt pain tear at her and Harper. Her heart rate doubled at the sight of him, felt like she couldn't breathe at all as she stood staring at him. Her own mate, who never knew who she was. Never would. Felt goosebumps break out all over her body as pain spread through her. Couldn't speak, couldn't even draw a breath at the sight of him. He still smelled the same to her. His scent filled her nostrils, and she heard Harper win inside her mind. Then there was Hadley, his mate, right next to him, and his hand moved to the small of her back as he brought her into the room. Felt gut-wrenching pain twist her heart, which was now beating erratically inside her chest, at having to see them together. She did not need this. Did not want to see him with her. Finally managed to take in a half-strangled gasp of air as she took a step back away from him, shook her head slightly. He was looking right at her, and she knew that his alpha senses would pick up on her erratic heart beating uncontrollably, her sudden inability to breathe. Her reaction to him in this room, she couldn't hide it, the pain that she was feeling, that was pulling at every fiber of her, and Harper at seeing him with another was too much for them to handle. "You will make Hadley the dress she wants," he stated coldly, still glaring at her. Piper shook her head no, because they would not. She would not let someone else wear the dress that should have been hers, especially not the woman that was taking her place at his side. Saw him take a step towards her, felt Harper push forward as they stepped back from him. A snarl came from her at the threat he posed to them. Saw his eyes go more than a little wide, obviously thought he had come here to deal with a human. Saw his head tilt and watched as he drew in a deep breath, trying to figure out what she was. Harper's eyes would not give them away as a wolf. Her wolf's eyes were white irises with a black outer edge. They did not have the standard green or yellow of a wolf. Saw Hadley reach out and touch his arm. Her eyes moved right to the way her hand landed on his arm, the way her fingers curled gently around his forearm. So very familiar, more pain touched them. Felt her whole body shiver and then start to tremble as she heard Hadley say his name softly. Then they were gone. Out of the room, through the interconnecting door to her office, out the door to her balcony and down the stairs at full wolf speed, slamming doors closed behind her as she went. Ran all the way to the small courtyard that she shared with the 3 other boutique stores along the street. Tears welling as she desperately tried to calm down and not to cry. He'd smelled her, still had no idea who she was, just stood there glaring at her like he hated her, had come into her office to make demands of her for his new mate. He had no idea how much it would hurt her, never had, and why would he now? Her rejection had been in effect for years now. She was nothing to him, never had been, never would be. Hated that she still loved him, that Harper too felt for her mate. Hated that they could still smell him, leaned on the brick wall and felt cold all over, even with the sun shining on her still felt cold. Had one hand over her mouth and the other was clutching at her chest as she tried to calm herself down. Tried to let go of the pain that was eating them alive. Harper was already curled up in a ball of pain and misery inside her mind. Pain was radiating off of her in waves at seeing him with another. Slid down the wall and hugged her knees to herself, put her head on her knees and just stayed there. They had moved states away, left Montana altogether so that they would never have to see him, never even have to hear his name in passing. The industry she was in was nothing like his, and she made sure never to run in the same circles. His pack was all about construction. They built skyscrapers and gated communities, private log cabins and homes for the super wealthy. The only risk she ran was that they might at some point work for the same human, but even that was slim, seeing she had moved several states away. Now he was here in her place of work, angry at her, for her refusal to make a Luna dress for his Luna. There were plenty of other places that the girl could go to get a dress made. Hell, the woman could get one made right in her pack. Piper was certain that Renee's boutique was still there, that Renee herself was still making dresses for the pack's she-wolf population. Closed her eyes and willed that man to leave, to just go away, to never come back. The pain was too great, knowing who and what he had been to them once. Knowing it would never change. He had another mate now, tears burned down her cheeks in hot rivers. They could not deal with him. It was just too much to handle. Sat there on the ground, trying to calm down. It was all she could do, closed her eyes and just breathed, long, slow, deep breaths in and out until the pain eased off. It did not go away completely but eased until it was just a constant dull ache, would likely take all day to go away. Took her phone from her pocket and called her own store, called Izzy, who picked up as professional as ever. "Izzy, is he gone?" she asked softly. "Yes, Piper, are you all right? Where did you go? He sounded very annoyed that you just left." "I don't care, Izzy. He left is all I care about. Did you see him drive away at all?" "No, Piper." "What is going on?" "Nothing. Don't worry about it. Just, I will not be working for him, for that woman or anyone from his company. It's Drake Industries, the answer is no." "Piper, if you're in trouble." "I'm not, Izzy." She reassured her. New protocol though. No taking any appointments without knowing the company they work from. All right. "Okay, Piper." Izzy sounded a bit more than confused, but Piper knew that the woman would follow instructions. Was nothing but professional all the time. Had been working for Piper now 6 years, helped her to open her other 2 boutiques, one in Olympia, Washington, and the other in Los Angeles, California. Izzy was also about to help start preparations for the first international store in Sydney, Australia. She had been to a fashion show out there and presented her gowns, and they had sold out. She had orders for more already. Izzy would be opening and going to run that store, a full manager of her own store. There was no one else that Piper trusted to do so. She and Brandon would be going for a 3-month period of time. Perhaps longer, depending on how things went, smooth or not. Got up off the ground finally and headed inside by the back entrance to the ground floor, made her way through the storage area, past the dressing rooms and to the front of the store. Saw Izzy looking at her somewhat worriedly as she walked towards the front window and looked outside. Looked both ways up and down the street, could not see his car or anything like what his car had been back then. It could have changed, she supposed, but did know he would be driving a 4x4 of some sort. All his pack cars were, had to be due to the size of wolves, all large and imposing. Saw nothing that would pass for a pack car. Then realized this far from his pack, it was likely that he would be driving a rental car, but there was no sign of him or his unit that she could see. Turned away from the window to find Izzy still watching her. "It's nothing," Piper told her. It was obvious that Izzy didn't believe her. "I've known you for a long time, Piper. It's not nothing, because nothing rattles you ever. Not even the big billionaires that waltz in here thinking it's their way or the highway. Now, twice this week, I've seen you reject that woman and both her. Whatever they are, the men escorting her. Both of them left annoyed and seemed angry about your response to them. Let it go, Izzy. Piper sighed. Piper. Izzy sighed right back. Come on, it's your past, I know that much. You never said where you were from. You never talk about it, like you just appeared here in Portland fully grown. I did. Piper stated, a little annoyed with her prying. Saw Izzy actually laugh. Yeah, right, you know them. But they didn't seem to know you, right? Correct, and we'll leave it at that, alright. Fine, and if they come back? Izzy huffed, giving up on trying to pull information out of her. I'm not here. Pure and simple. Piper murmured. I don't think that either of those guys will believe that. I don't care. I'll be away on holidays anyway, and hopefully that will solve the issue. Then I can work from home for the next week. Avoidance isn't always the key, Piper. Izzy commented casually. Piper snorted. There was not key, she didn't send to anyone. She was invisible even to her own kind and to others as well, and she had come across a few vampires. They were fashion addicts, a few fairies and a bear shifter once. That man had damned near knocked her over, put his hands on her to steady her, and had then looked right at her, smelled her up close, frowned deeply at her. She'd politely apologized to him. He'd continued to stare at her, obviously uncertain as to what to make of her, but had stepped aside and allowed her to pass after a minute. It was the reaction she got from most other worldly creatures. Humans detected nothing at all, and it was likely most other worldly creatures thought she was just human, which is how she lived her life anyhow. Piper went and picked Brandon up from the bus stop like normal, walked back to the boutique, and the hire car to take them to the airport was just arriving as they got back, very punctual. Didn't waste any time in grabbing their luggage. Told Izzy she'd see her in a few weeks, just in case there were other around listening. Didn't want to risk it, got in the car and they were off. Saw Brandon look right at her. Mum, what's wrong? He asked. Nothing, she smiled at him. Weeks, he queried. Oh, that, I'm going to be working from home when we get back is all. Okay, he nodded, smiling now. Their home was a lot closer to the school and meant less time on the bus, always made him happier. It also meant he could hang out with his friends and have them over as well. He had a good social life for a 7-year-old. Piper had no idea how she was going to explain to him about his first shift. She was raising him human. It was better this way, especially if he turned out to be just like her, to have no scent. She could smell him, but he was her child. Both her parents had never said they couldn't smell her, and they always seemed to know when she was about, so presumably they had been able to smell her. Just no one else could as far as she knew. Touched the crystal pendant as she thought about her mother. Her wolf's eyes had also been white like Harper's. A hereditary trait, she thought, but Piper did recall that her parents both had good social lives within the pack. She did not understand why she was the way she was, only knew it was horrid to have to live with. Till she'd run away and gone rogue, saved her and Harper from death. Their fate inside the pack had been killing them, slowly but surely. Belonged to no one out here. She was a rogue, as was Brandon. Not that she smelled that on him, didn't smell it on her either for that matter. Likely he too was going to be unscentable, she hoped not, didn't want him to suffer as she had, would not wish that on anybody, not ever. They arrived at the Four Seasons, and the runs were still open for 1 hour, headed straight out with Brandon. He was super excited, but kept reminding her, no work, Mum, you promised. Piper was laughing at him now. He'd said it for like the 10th time, as though he didn't believe her, that he thought she was going to find an excuse to work this weekend. Piper had not even brought her sketch pad or any drawing pencils. This weekend was just her and Brandon, snowboarding and maybe some hiking, if the weather permitted and Brandon wanted off of the slopes. He loved being outdoors, in the forest, went camping with his best friend once and loved it. Did not surprise her at all, not considering what he was, and an alpha wolf would love it even more, especially once shifted the hunting and chasing of prey. She had no idea when he would have his first shift, usually at 16, but research told her anywhere from 13 onwards. Piper was going to have to sit him down at some point and explain other worldly creatures to him. Before then, might have to get him to watch a few movies first to see what he thought, though at just 7, it was a bit too early for those types of movies. They had dinner in their room, and he was now playing an online game with his friends back home. She didn't mind, was happy that he was just happy. Told him she would go for a walk and be back in a short while. He'd hollered, "No work, Mum," as she'd headed out the door. Made Piper laugh. "I promised already, didn't I?" She saw him narrow his eyes right on her for a moment and then nodded his head. Piper had stepped out of her room and headed straight for the bar downstairs. Needed a drink. It wouldn't touch the sides or affect her in any way. Human alcohol did nothing for her. Just wanted one, had a long stressful day and wanted a drink. Human would do. Sank down on a bar stool and ordered an espresso martini. Loved the smell of coffee, so it was a good start. Could sit and sip it and enjoy the smell of it. Just relax a little. She was well away from her home and the stress of the day. Heard Harper growl inside her mind, full annoyance in her growl, as the scent of wolves hit them. Glanced in the mirrored back splash of the bar and saw a half-dozen muscled-up men and a few young-looking women headed this way. Downed her martini in one go and banged the glass down on the bar. "I'll take another," she told the bartender as those wolves sat down at the bar, but before he could serve them. Picked up that martini and downed it in one go as well, as the bartender swiped her credit card. She would normally enjoy sipping on her espresso martini, but her night just got completely ruined. Took her card back and spun her stool around. Muttered as she got up and walked away from the bar, "Hate the stench that just came in." You'd think animals would learn to shower. Heard the dead quiet of all of them. Every one of those blasted wolves had heard her comment, and she knew it. Didn't even care at all. She'd scented more than one pack. Multiple, in fact. It irritated her nose. "What a bitch," came a female voice. Piper snorted as she walked out of the bar. First class asterisk at that. She shot back, letting them know she had heard the comment as much as they had hers. Didn't know why they were all here, didn't care, had ruined her mood completely. Stood and waited on the elevator to go back up to her room. "Oh my goddess, you're Piper Harper," a voice cried out all excited. Piper rolled her eyes, so not in the mood. The woman or girl sounded very young and very excitable. A bride to be, she thought. Only brides would know who she was. Turned and looked to where the voice had come from. Saw a very pretty young woman hurrying towards her. Dressed in a beautiful white cashmere sweater, black leggings, and white furry boots. But it was the scent she gave off that made Piper look back to the elevator and pray it would open before the woman got to her. She had seen the rather large man strolling along behind the young girl, an alpha. He was likely the girl's father. They had similar looks, same dark hair and slate gray eyes. He was smiling at the girl. She reached Piper before the elevator did. "Oh my, I love your goddess gowns. I want one when I get married." Married, that was a human thing. Playing at being human, seeing where they were, she guessed. "Yes, I can't wait to meet him one day, the man I will marry." The elevator opened and Piper stepped into it. "I suggest you find him first, then buy a dress. Not the other way around. Might seem desperate otherwise," she told the girl as she hit the button for her floor. Saw the girl's mouth open in an O of shock and just stand and stare at her as the doors closed on her. "Can't seem to catch a break," she muttered to herself as the elevator took her up to her floor. "Must be some sort of alpha meeting going on. Just our bloody luck. Go away to get away from wolves, only to find a whole bloody hotel full of them. On the bright side, they did know what she was and would leave her alone." Chapter 3. Bradley POV. Bradley was sitting in his office, frowning deeply. He'd not liked hearing his beta Cooper tell him that Piper Harper, the designer, had made Hadley cry. Had not liked hearing she'd torn up the picture of the gown that she wanted either. The girl had been dreaming of wearing this particular gown for years. Hadley was such a sweet-natured kid, never hurt anyone, did not have a mean bone in her body. Now some human designer had not just refused to make the dress she was dreaming of wearing, but had torn up the picture she had been hanging onto and saved all these years, waiting for the day she was old enough to get a gown of her own. He'd always told her no, she was too young. But now she had turned 18 and at some point, She would find her mate and wanted that dress, always had. Never once in the past 4 years of seeing it had she changed her mind. Her older sister Megan wore a Piper-labeled dress when she found her mate, and apparently, they had been sold here in one of the Pack's stores, before this Piper Harper woman became famous and wet by just Piper, only made wedding dresses now it seemed. Now this Piper Harper woman was not only rude, but had not been the slightest bit intimidated by Cooper either. A human had simply stood her ground, raised an eyebrow at his aura, which he'd rolled right at her, apparently didn't even flinch when still. Cooper's wolf had risen, to try and startle or shock the woman into backing down, and going along with giving Hadley the dress she wanted. It's odd, Brad, I couldn't smell anything about her, not even a human scent. I don't think she is human. Most would have pissed themselves with steel staring them down, not this woman. Cooper had told him. What did you make of her exactly? Nothing, for all intensive purposes, looks human. Cooper replied. But she's not. Brad's frown deepened even further. I doubt it, but whatever she is. Her scent is fully masked, I'd say. Stay there. I'll come out and deal with the woman myself. If Hadley wants that dress, then she'll have it. Has been dreaming of that dress for bloody years. Brad, Eddie picked up something weird off of her too. He heard his beta sigh. That would be. Trust his gamma to try and feel the woman out. Anger, when she stepped out of the store, we were still across the street. She actually looked at each of us in turn, rolled her eyes, and then stalked off down the street. I was hard-pressed not to go and put fear into the woman. Eddie, stopped you in other words. Bradley shook his head. It was likely the only thing that would stop him. A concern from the gamma looked at each of you? Yes, right at each of us. Do you think she knows what you are? Likely. Took an instant dislike to Harper and myself for that matter. I guess we'll find out when I pay that woman a visit. I might just make her cry, the way she made Hadley, he muttered. He sat tapping his pen on his desk. Cooper was likely right in the not-human assumption. He was rarely wrong on his hunches, and the fact that his wolf had not bothered the woman at all spoke volumes about that she was not human. Brad got up from his desk and made his way to Renee's boutique and pushed into the store. Saw Renee smile up at him. Alpha, what can I help you with? She asked right away. Hadley is having trouble getting the dress she wants, he told her. Yes, Renee nodded, the Piper Hadley gown. Hadley came in here and asked if I could get it ordered for her. No such luck, Alpha. It's not made anymore, I'm afraid. Not made anymore? He asked out of curiosity. The lady I spoke with stated it's well out of season and only one was ever made. A display gown only, no orders were taken, and it was removed from the catalog. That didn't sound right to him. Did you ever meet this Piper Harper person? Before she was well known, he wanted to know the background of the woman. Renee raised an eyebrow at him. Yes, she nodded with a frown of her own now, shook her head as well, seemed a bit confused by his question. I stocked her dresses for about 3.5 years here in the store. Then nothing, just gone, no more. What was the woman like? He asked outright. I have to go and deal with her myself. Quiet. That's it? Yes, that's it. Renee nodded, never really said much to me. Bradley left just as frustrated as he'd gone into the store, headed back to his office and Googled the woman. Just her company came up, Piper Harper Designs, a photo of a bunch of women, out the front of a store. He had no idea which one she was, though from what he could find out. She did a fair bit of traveling and bridal fashion shows, had 3 stores, and there on her company page was a plan for her first international store to open soon. Had good reviews from wealthy clients, mostly humans. Though he did note some of the names were old or ancient sounding, made him think some were not human at all. Perhaps this woman simply knew about other worldly creatures, and therefore was not so easily scared or frightened by them. Scrolled through the information trying to find out anything about the woman herself. Nothing much, just appeared about 6 years ago and was a hit. Already had her first store out in Portland for 1.5 years before making it big. Which is where he knew Hadley and his unit were. Likely if this woman was used to dealing with wolves, vampires, and other creatures, her scent was masked to stop them from tracking her back to her place of residence, a safety feature so to speak. He sighed and booked himself on a flight with Wolf Airlines, signed all the necessary paperwork to promise not to start a mid-air fight if he came across a rival pack, under the rules of the Wolfen Council, then packed himself a suitcase. Didn't like having to leave his pack unattended. It wasn't as large as some others around, only 800 wolves. Pulled his younger brother Hendrix to his position to protect the pack while he was gone. The man was a good strong wolf, though at 24 was still young. Could be a bit lax in his duties, but Bradley knew if there was an attack, Hendrix would do anything to protect the pack and his mate for that matter. Hendrix was also unhappy about Hadley crying, it seemed. She was their younger sister, a surprise pup. His father and his second-chance mate both had children of their own and were not planning on any more. But there was Hadley a year after they had found each other, soft and sweet-natured like his stepmother was. He'd been 18 when Hadley was born, was currently twice her again. His flight was the next day, late in the afternoon. Bradley arrived to find Hadley holed up in her room in the hotel suite, sitting staring out the window. She looked up at him and he'd sighed and walked over to her, hugged his little sister. Come on, it's not that bad. She was so mean. How can anyone who makes such pretty things be so mean? She asked him. Bradley shook his head. I don't know, but we'll spend the day shopping tomorrow, and if you can't find anything you like elsewhere, I'll go and deal with the woman myself. I don't want another dress. She'd pouted right up at him. You might not have a choice, Hadley. I spoke with Renee. She said the dress is seasons old and they don't make it anymore. He told her gently, not wanting to upset her further. But Piper Harper could. It's why I wanted to come right here to the store, to where she works. To ask her in person. She was looking up at him, with those big blue eyes of hers, pleading with him. How anyone could not give her what she wanted was beyond him. Pitied the poor wolf that would be her mate. He was doomed already. Those eyes so big and expressive. The man was never going to be able to say no to Hadley. All right, but you'll let me take you shopping tomorrow first. Try on other dresses, be open to it, he told her firmly. Watched as Hadley pouted up at him again, but then nodded and said, Yes, Bradley. Good girl, now let's go and eat. I'm starving. You're always starving, going to get fat you are, she teased him. Bradley laughed. Unlikely. I work out a lot, and Benson is always ripping out of me to bolt off and hunt. Not an ounce of fat on me. He poked her in the belly. You'll get fat one day. Finally saw her smile. Yep, and it'll be all pup. Watched her as she pushed her belly out, trying to make it look as though she was already pregnant. Enough of that. You're too young for that, he told her and took her hand and led her out of her room so they could all go and eat. They spent the entire next day dragging Hadley from one bridal store to another, and though she tried on many dresses, and she looked beautiful in all of them, she never truly smiled, and Eddie just sighed after each dress and shook his head. Brad, it's not going to work. The girl was a ball of sparkly excitement going into Piper Harper's goddess gown store. I'm not even getting a flicker of any of that. Bradley knew he was going to have to go and confront the woman. Didn't particularly want to. Hated having to push his alpha aura over humans. Much preferred to use his charm and good looks, but this Piper Harper woman, from what he'd gleaned from Cooper, was not going to be a pushover. If she wasn't human, as Cooper suspected she wasn't, then he didn't even know what he was walking into tomorrow. Could bloody well be a witch for all he knew, and taking on of them on was a no-no, especially if she had sisters around or a coven. Didn't want that coming back at him, but he could find nothing on her, neither could his unit, and they searched out everything. Just appeared and opened a store 7.5 years ago, till then, didn't seem to exist at all. Finally got a picture of her, a small woman, light caramel brown hair with highlights that fell down past her shoulders, honey brown colored eyes, quite pretty with that slight golden hue and very fair skin, likely didn't see the sun much. She looked young in the photo. She was wearing a white suit with a dark purple blouse. It was a picture of her on the cover of a magazine just a few months ago. That tiny woman didn't flinch at Steele at all? Nope. No human that tiny could hold up to Cooper and Steele's fierceness. He frowned. Didn't like that they couldn't find out where she had come from, or what her past was, what she was for that matter. Too much of nothing around her made him more than a little uncomfortable. Piper Harper likely was not her real name, Likely she had left her past and become someone else when she moved out here. Was why she had nothing in her past. Brad had called the store several times that morning to request to speak to this Piper Harper woman and was informed she was not in the store, but working in her studio all day. Would not be taking appointments, so he sent his Delta and Gamma to watch the store at 11 only to find out that the bloody woman was there, that her studio was a part of the store. Infuriated him. Brad had grabbed Hadley and said, "Let's go sort this out. You'll have your Piper Harper dress, I guarantee it." He'd called himself 4 times that morning to speak with the woman, instead of having to go down there and confront her, and her assistant Izzy had told him the same thing each time, that she was not there. Well, she bloody was here. Eddie and Harry had seen the woman herself cross the street and get a round of coffees for herself and her employees, had carried 6 cups back in fact. Izzy, her shop assistant, had stood and stared at him. Her eyes had moved to Hadley a moment later. She'd frowned right at the girl in fact. Had clearly recognized her from her previous visit to the store with Cooper. He had snapped right at her, whereas Piper Harper, his irritation showing, it was unavoidable, with the way he had been handled all day, not something he was used to at all. People did what they were told by him, not declined his requests, certainly didn't go about avoiding him or outright lying to him. Izzy had snapped her mouth shut, but her eyes had belied her, flicked up to the loft area of the store fleetingly. He'd not missed it, and against her wishes had marched himself up there and banged the door open to let himself in. Saw this woman Piper Harper turn around from the dress she was working on and look right at him, watched as her brown eyes had widened completely as she stared at him, saw actual pain flare in those eyes as his locked right onto hers. Saw her whole body react to his presence in the room. She was instantly rooted to the spot. Her heart rate increased dramatically, and she stopped breathing suddenly like she just forgot how to breathe as she stood staring at him. Saw her creamy-colored skin go pale, right before his very eyes, and then as Hadley stepped into the room next to him, she went completely ashen in color. Her brown eyes dulled and lost their luster. That golden hue was gone and left her brown eyes bland. And her heartbeat was racing uncontrollably. He saw her break out into a sheen of sweat and registered pain in her facial expression. Bradley couldn't understand her reaction to him. He smelled nothing in this room. His beta was right. She did not smell like anything at all. Her reaction to him only infuriated him even more. Why on earth would this woman feel pain just from laying eyes on him? And that was what he was seeing. The breath she finally managed to drag into her lungs sounded like it took a lot of effort to actually draw, watched as she took a step away from him, and shook her head slowly as if to say, "No, you can't be here." Why on earth would she have that kind of reaction to him? He did not recall meeting her before. There was no reason for this kind of reaction to him. Yes, he looked mad and irritated, but that should frighten her, not cause pain. "You will make Hadley the dress she wants," he informed her, and he was not going to be taking no for an answer. He allowed his tone to speak for him, implied that she would be doing as she was told. Saw the damned woman shake her head again, defying him and his request. Glared right at her. No one said no to him. He was not about to let this woman start a trend. Took a full step towards her. He was not going to leave until Hadley got her dress. Piper Harper took a full step back away from him. The moment he stepped forward, she did not want to be near him that much. He got. Then her eyes changed to a brilliant white, looked very much like a wolf's eyes, but where white, it was odd and pretty at the same time. Looked right into them only to have her beast snarl all low and menacingly at him. Shocked him more than a little, as he realized this woman was a wolf. White wolfen eyes must be very rare. Hadley touched his arm and he saw them. Those eyes move right to the way Hadley was holding onto his arm, and then they were just gone. Heard Hadley say his name softly, and then the woman before him was just gone, at full wolfen speed. Vanished through an interconnecting door which he was now staring at, closed behind her, banged shut at that. His hearing picked up her fleeing from the building altogether, out another door and down a set of stairs, just to get away from him it seemed. Felt his Wolf Benson huff inside of his mind, confused by her reaction to them as well. "Bradley, she was afraid of you." Harper sighed and shook her head. No, she wasn't, he answered her. Bradley didn't believe that Piper Harper was afraid of him at all. He smelled no fear in this room. Fear had a very distinctive scent, smelled like astringent weeds to him. But I could hear her heart racing and the way she ran away. Not afraid, Hadley. It was pain. Looking at me caused her physical pain. He'd seen it, and before she'd fled the room, the entire building for that matter, he had felt it coming off of her and her wolf in waves. Bradley looked to where Hadley's hand was on his arm. Piper and her wolf had looked right at that herself. More pain had rolled off of them, not just Piper but her wolf too. Something else was going on. Bradley walked over and pushed through the door to the next room and office, pushed out to the balcony he could see, and saw the stairs that lead down and away, looked around that area, couldn't see her. She was gone. They were too fast, were gone now. Frowned and turned to take Hadley back to the hotel. He was uncertain as to what had just gone on here in this room, but something was ticking inside his brain, though those eyes, he was willing to bet not many wolves had white eyes like she did. Something about them were ticking at him. Bradley was going to have to come back on his own. Without Hadley, the girl at his side had increased the woman's pain enormously, walked past her assistant who was staring at him, seemed worried, likely had heard the boss flee. She hadn't gone quietly. He moved his eyes from her and left the store, taking Hadley with him, put her in the waiting car a few car parks down and got in himself. Back to the hotel, he told Cooper. What happened? Cooper asked him. Nothing. Bradley muttered, she is a wolf. No, he saw his beta frown at him, disbelief on his face. She has very pretty white wolf eyes. Hadley sighed, but she didn't like Bradley at all. Bradley frowned at his sister's words. White wolf eyes, he heard Cooper murmur. Yes, white with black around the edges. Rare, I imagine. Bradley answered, not that it was a question. What is it, Brad? I don't know, just twitching my brain is all. I think she acted like she was your mate. Hadley suddenly piped up from the back seat. He turned and looked at her, right at her, a deep frown on his face. No one in the pack, not even his parents, knew about that day, certainly not Hadley. Bradley could feel Cooper's eyes on him too now. Why do you say that? He asked his little sister, couldn't understand her logic. Saw her shrug, her whole body went crazy. I tried to tell you to calm down, was going to mind link you what I thought, but then when I touch you, she just ran away. It was weird, even I picked up on that, as did my wolf. Could you smell her? No, he answered Hadley, and he couldn't. Wasn't likely to with her scent masked all the time either. Turned back around in his seat. So much pain in the woman, he thought, and then even more when Hadley had touched him. Her instant dislike to Cooper and Hadley the other day. She was also a wolf. He was frowning now. She knew who he was, that much Bradley was certain of. She had seen him before, likely had known who Cooper was when he had walked into the store. Bradley, it was Cooper. Not now, he snapped at his beta. He knew what the man was thinking. Because now he was bloody well thinking it himself. The pain that had ripped through he and Benson 8 years ago. Out of nowhere at all. He'd not understood it, and it had damned near killed him. That night, Bradley turned to look out the car window. He'd not smelled that girl either. The one in his bed had scented nothing that night. Then a little later, on top of that pain, he'd felt someone reject him as their alpha and go rogue. That had ripped right through him, had intensified the pain he was already feeling. He had damned near clawed his own heart out trying to make it stop. So bloody bad he'd rather had been dead than feel that pain. His pack doctor had sedated him because he and Benson had not been able to cope with it. But only a select few knew about that. His unit and his pack doctor, Samuel. That was it. Chapter 4. Piper POV. Piper woke with tears falling from her eyes. She had not had a dream of him in years, not one where he was touching her and kissing her. Couldn't get enough of her like he had done that one night they'd spent together. But it ended now, this time with him biting another, marking and claiming another, and it hurt so bad, even dreaming of it was tearing at her. Pulled the pillow over her face to muffle the sobs that racked her body, until they stopped, held that pillow tightly to her face so that Brandon wouldn't hear her and get worried that something was wrong with her. She had not dreamed of Bradley Drake in near 5 years now. had pushed him aside with all she had, with all they had, she and Harper. It was not healthy to think about something they could never have. Now how they should have been able to have him, not as their mate. Thought they had moved on, now it seemed that they had not. Seeing him had only brought them pain and anguish, and now they were back to square one it seemed. Crying over what was not theirs would never be theirs. They had lost him long ago. Hell, they had never had him to lose in the first place. Not in that sense. He looked right at them yesterday, and there was not a single ounce of recognition in his eyes. She had lived inside his pack for 21 years, and for 4 of those years he had been her alpha, and still he couldn't see her, couldn't even recognize her. She had pledged her loyalty to him as all did, though she had not known what he was to her then, but he had said her name, looked right at her, and accepted her pledge. Hell, the man had trained her warrior class once a month from the day he took over, and he had bumped into so many times over the years, even after she knew what he was to her. Still, he did not recognize her. Cursed by the mood goddess it seemed. Got out of her bed, the sun was barely touching the horizon, and as she stepped out onto the balcony, trying to let the freezing cold morning air freeze her heart into a numb state that felt nothing, caught a glimpse of movement off in the distance. Turned her gaze on it. Harper moved forward to lend the use of her sight. Wolves, she stated, and then receded back into Piper's mind. Do you want to go for a run? Piper asked her wolf. No, was the only response she got. This was how it had been for nearly a decade now. Harper had not shifted in nearly forever. Just didn't seem to want to. Never explained why. Didn't really have to. Piper knew that she likely no longer could shift to her wolf form. It had been too long. She'd given up. Too demoralized and in too much pain at the time of her deciding she didn't want to shift anymore. Harper no longer wanted to be out there. Didn't want to be anywhere near her own kind. Just lived inside of Piper's mind, could push forward at will and talk at will, but did not shift to her gray and white wolf anymore. Had stopped doing that before they had even left the pack and gone rogue. Hadn't shifted since Piper was 20, in fact. Maybe she would once again start to shift when Brandon shifted for the first time. Perhaps she would want to run with his wolf when he got him. Piper did hope so. She recalled her very first shift to Harper. It had been on her own at 16 under the full moon just 4 days after her birthday. Didn't have anyone around her at the time. No family, her mom and dad long passed. So no one to really talk her through it, though she had listened to others about their first shift when they had talked about it. Heard it was going to be painful and could take a while that first shift, but it got less painful with each one after that until your wolf could just rip out of you at will in pretty much less than a minute. She'd seen it too. That day had been very liberating for Piper, and Harper had been with her for nearly a year before it, had been able to talk to her for a long time before her first shift. She didn't think that was normal, but it had been nice to have the company. They had shifted, and then Harper had run about in the pack's woods on her own for many hours, chasing rabbits and other animals. Digging at burrows, had even gone for a swim in the pack's river, rolled around in the dirt, and generally been really happy about being given full control. She had been a happy wolf once, but over time sadness and pain had reduced her wolf, held the two of them to just a shell of who they'd been. Harper had no desire to shift at all anymore, not even under the full moon, when the pull was at its greatest. When your wolf loved to howl up at the moon, thankful for its life, and to let the moon goddess know of this. Harper did not have that, hadn't held up at the moon since they'd turned 18, and sent out their mate who did not send them back. Believed the moon goddess herself had forsaken them for some reason, cursed them. Who knew why or what they had done to deserve such treatment? Only the moon goddess herself would know. Piper sighed and walked back inside as the sun rose completely into eastern sky. Made herself a cup of coffee. There was no reason to wake Brandon. The runs here didn't open till after 9, so he could sleep in. She did go through the room service menu and order them breakfast for 8. A large breakfast for the both of them. They would be on the slopes all day long, and she knew Brandon was itching to hit the half-pipe in the afternoon too. She would deny him nothing. He was the real joy in their lives. Brandon was the only thing that had kept them going, really. When Harper had told her they were with child, tears had burned down her face in hot rivers, both pain and joy at the same time. They had not been expecting it. It had only been one night with Bradley Drake, and they had not been in heat. It was practically unheard of. It had been her first time as well. She had been completely shocked by the news. But that news had been the thing that had made her pick herself up from her hotel bed, where she and Harper had lain sad and broken for many weeks, had made them eat properly for the first time in weeks, and allowed them to become healthy once more. It also helped that with her rejection she had not felt any more pains of betrayal from him. Brandon had been born 6 months after they had left the pack, born in a human hospital. The doctors all thought she had lied about how far along she was. She'd heard them talking about it with her Wolfen hearing later that night, because he was fully developed and not premature like he should have been. She had freaked out when she'd gone into labor herself, had thought it was too soon for her baby to come, and rushed herself to the hospital. The labor had been difficult and gone on for 18 hours, had been exhausted by it, and honestly glad it was over. They had pushed pain drugs at her, but she had not wanted to harm her child, and had refused them all. She had looked into it once she was out of the hospital, used the internet to access the Wolfen World's records. It wasn't hard if you were a wolf, only had to put in your pack and alpha's name, though she had been a rogue at the time she had that information. Humans didn't understand it, so even if they came across it they wouldn't be able to access it, password protected so to speak. She had read that alpha-blooded pups usually did come early, somewhere between 5 and 7 months, some even earlier depending on the bloodline and their lineage. Brandon had been born right on time, as it would have been expected inside any pack. It also stated the labor could be expected to be difficult, depending on the size of the pup and the lineage of the mother herself. Explained a lot. Brandon himself had never gotten sick, not once. Typical of a Wolfen child. Neither had she. Harper healed any and all sorts of ailments, as did most wolves. Only occasionally did you hear of a wolf getting sick with a human disease. Though rogues were considered disease-ridden, they weren't mostly. It was just because of how they looked and smelled. That some of their wounds never fully healed over and were always open and covered in flies. They looked sick, when in all reality most had just lost their minds and the ability to both care for themselves and heal themselves. Those mangy critters you saw out there in the wilds were just completely broken and had no real will to live anymore. Well, not until they were in a fight and then their instincts kicked in, but once that fight was over, they just went back to roaming around mindlessly. Craved companionship always, but could no longer seem to understand what companionship meant. Their need to mate anything female was a part of that craving. It's why female rogues didn't do so well any males saw them, and that craving kicked in regardless of it not being their mate. Some rogues could survive quite well, like she did. Found a way, or a reason to live, isolated themselves out in the wilds or ensconced themselves into the human world and stayed out of trouble. Found human companions to replace their need to be social and attached themselves to those that had no idea they were not human. Though some were very cruel and nasty creatures that would hunt and prey on those others that were weak and vulnerable, rogues that were new to being on their own, couldn't protect themselves properly or were just not trained how. Kidnapped them, abused them, and even tortured them before selling them off to the Wolfen black market when they were done with them. Then there were those that roamed in full rogue packs. They were the real dangerous ones. They attacked packs at will, even had their own hierarchy within their packs, took on a leader. Their alpha created an alpha unit and roamed about doing whatever they wanted. She'd read tales where they would claim old destroyed or abandoned packlands for themselves and tried to become civilized once more. Sometimes it worked and other times it did not. She and Harper had Brandon to live for. He was their reason to continue on living, looking after themselves, their one true joy in life. The only thing they considered a blessing from the moon goddess, though at times they still thought it to be a punishment, just one more thing to cause them pain. That he was born out here had be a rogue like them. She sighed, why they were like this, had no sense. She didn't know, Harper didn't know, neither of them understood it. It was just how it was, and they had to live with it. And likely for a very long time, though how she was going to remain in the human world for that long undetected, she had not figured out yet. She was only 28 but had already stopped aging, would likely look her current age for another 30 or 40 years. The perks of being an otherworldly creature with healing abilities. Could be 200 years old and only look 40-ish to the humans. Chapter 5. Piper POV. Breakfast would be here soon. Piper turned at the sound of Brandon coming from his room, still in his pajamas. She'd heard his alarm go off at 8. The boy was smiling already, excited about the day on the slopes, such a happy kid. She was really glad of that. Smiled right at him and told him he grinned right at her, then to the slopes. Yes, once the runs and lifts are open. She smiled right back and the half-pipe. Heck yeah, I want you to take lots of photos too. My friends don't believe I can half-pipe already. Gotcha, lots of photos it is. She nodded, though doubted very much that his friends didn't believe him. He was naturally talented in all areas of sport. He likely wanted photos for himself. He was a bit of a show-off, but that likely came with the territory. At least he wasn't a bully. Like some young alpha-blooded wolves were, their need to dominate and be in control outweighing everything else, even the way they treated other wolves in their own pack. She had heard him, talking to himself while standing in front of his bedroom mirror on many occasions over the last few months, telling himself and agreeing with himself that he was going to be very big and strong one day. That he was going to be a super fit athlete and couldn't wait to hit high school and take on all them slow pokes in track and field. He already believed he was going to be super strong and fast, that he was going to be able to outrun everyone. Was going to be one of the popular boys that knew everyone and everyone looked up to. Little did he know he was already the popular kid, that his very large circle of friends was because the humans were drawn to him and the power he held in his bloodline. As for the track and field thing, when he got older she would encourage it. It would be good for him to get that excess energy he would have out. Though once he got his wolf he was going to have to rein it in a fair bit, only beat those humans by a few seconds. His wolf was not likely going to want that, and she could only imagine how big and fast he would likely change in appearance as well. Shoot up and be big and strong overnight, that was going to be a shock to his friends. Thankfully, the boy was born in the human summertime, so it would happen away from school. She was also likely going to have to put him into a lot of sports to cater to his needs to be out hunting and chasing. She was hoping swimming and rock climbing along with running would be a good distraction for him, maybe throw in some sort of martial arts training. Though if he held no scent like her, he would be just fine. Nothing would scent him out and challenge him or attack him. But if he did scent of a wolf, once he got his wolf, and his scent was of alpha blood, that could well find him in a fight or two, and she was going to need him to be able to defend himself. Piper supposed she could train him. She did know how to fight, had trained hard from the age of 10 to try and make her parents proud. Even though they were long gone, she had trained as a junior without Wolf. Ran the agility course by herself sometimes when she'd not been able to sleep, or had been sad and lonely by herself. Ran round the pack itself till she was exhausted, and lay down on the ground till she could get up again. Then she joined the junior warriors with wolves the day after she had gotten Harper to be trained properly in full hand-to-hand, and then she and Harper had trained day and night, increased their skills, in her backyard, well out in the woods. Still used the agility course day and night, even trained on it in the pouring down rain. No one had bothered them, no one had stopped them, likely no one even knew about it. She and Harper had been well on their way to becoming a high-ranked warrior just like their parents had been, might have even surpassed them and made it to the elite warrior rank, something she had been aiming for. Probably would be now if her life hadn't turned out to be so darn painful. They had a home gym, took up half her double garage, and she ran on her treadmill every day, in the morning at sunrise till she had to get ready for work, and on a bad day in the night too, for hours sometimes just ran to escape her own thoughts. Pushed herself hard on those nights. She'd already purchased Brandon his own treadmill, and it was next to hers. The boy also liked to run, did not really surprise her at all, though he only ran every other day. Piper and Harper found Brandon's attitude about running next to her quite amusing. For the past few months now he had become quite competitive, and he was now always trying to outrun her. He had no hope without his wolf, though he did not know that. He was likely to outrun her easily once he did get his wolf though, being alpha-blooded and all. Brandon was irked by her ability to outrun him, and so easily. Usually on Saturday and Sunday mornings, the two of them would run together either around their neighborhood or through the wooded area out the back of their house. He was frustrated that when he got tired and needed to rest, she could just still bounce along and tease him about not being as fit as she was. He was actually very fit for a 7-year-old, could outrun all of his human friends long distance. There were 1 or 2 in his school that could beat him. She'd seen them present as a challenge to him, and he didn't like it, pushed himself hard to try and beat them, was very annoyed when he couldn't, but those humans had pure track and field talent, likely to be some of the best in the world when they grew up. Even humans could excel at running. Piper offered him a challenge in the hotel's gym before hitting the slopes. It was Saturday, saw the boy huff at her in annoyance, and burst out laughing. Mummy can still beat you, she teased him. One day, I'll win and you know it, he'd shot right back at her. No running, we are on holidays, he'd stated, as though being here was his excuse not to run against her. Piper laughed, as did Harper inside her mind. She hugged the boy. Well then, I guess, the last one down the slope is a slow poke then. She threw out another challenge. I always beat you on the slopes. Brandon grinned now and then ran off to get dressed for the day, yelling, "You're the slow poke, Mom." That was true. They had been snowboarding since he was 5, 3 times a year, in different places around the world. If her work took her overseas and it was the snow season, off they went, but his beating her down the slopes was not the reason he thought it was. She and Harper purposely hung back just in case he came unstuck and needed help. They did not want to get to the bottom, only to realize that he had fallen and was injured, and she'd left him up there alone and in pain. So yes, he always got to the bottom first. But she never told him that. He liked thinking he was the better boarder and that he had better skills than she did on the snow. To be honest, she liked his cheekiness out there as well, his cheeky words thrown at her, "You're just not fast enough, Mom." To slow old woman, and then there was that big grin he would get sometimes, "You owe me waffles and ice cream." She loved how happy he looked. He was so very full of life all the time. Brandon could amaze her at times. Sometimes she had no idea how he was so well-adjusted and happy. She and Harper had definitely done a good job of keeping their pain hidden from him all this time, making sure he had all he needed, but not to spoil him so much that he became a brat. They hit the slopes as soon as the lifts were operating and went from one ski run to another all morning. Actually had a really good time with him out there, tormenting him openly. Catching up with him and making him think she was going to beat him right near the end of each run, saw that determination in him to win. He did love a challenge. Played with him all morning, they were laughing a lot. She would tickle him and chase him between runs, just mucking around and having a good old family holiday. They ate lunch on the mountain at Rendezvous Lodge before heading down again to let Brandon hit the halfpipe. She took lots of photos just like he had told her to. He was smiling and then grinning and laughing the whole time, so darn happy it was hard not to be happy herself. They headed out into the town to do some shopping in the afternoon, all boarded out for the day, and ran into a couple of wolves. Piper sidestepped most of them, knowing that they wouldn't scent her or know she was there, something she was completely used to, gotten used to it as she grown up. Got run into by one, a large man who'd had his head down looking at his phone. He growled at her for the insult she guessed. He was an alpha. She could scent it easily. Heard Brandon snap at him, "Look where you're going, jerkwad. You ran into us." Piper had shushed him and nodded to the man, who had looked right at her and then to the boy, angered by his worded insult, not something the man would have ever had thrown at him in all likelihood. "Rude child," he had murmured, and then turned to move on, thinking they were just human. "At least I look where I am going, you jerk." Brandon had yelled right at him as Piper had tugged him along down the path. "Don't say that, Brandon. Just let it go, son," she told him. Why? It was his fault, he had muttered. He was not wrong on that account. That alpha had been on his phone, likely using his wolfen senses to not run into people, his keen sense of smell picking up when those were close to him, but of course he could not scent her. She was invisible to them unless they were looking right at her. "It's fine, don't worry about it, Brandon." She'd encouraged him to let it go. "Mom, people run into you all the time, and you always apologize to them. It's not always your fault." "I know," Piper nodded. "I'm used to it, Brandon. It's been like that my whole life. Don't worry about it. People should watch where they are going," he muttered as they walked into a store, It's worse here, he stated and shook his own head about it as they walked into a store. And those big men, Mum. It's not like they can't see you, just ignorant and rude all of them. Piper sighed. This was the first time he had come across wolves en masse. There was no arguing with him about what he was noticing, it was also his point of view. He didn't know those big bastards were all alpha wolves and couldn't smell her, though why they couldn't see her. She had put it down to their sense of smell. Smell brought memories with it. And if one didn't smell, one could not be recalled by scent. Or at least that was what she thought. A part of Piper was wondering if his sudden outburst and agitation at these wolves was because he was alpha-blooded himself and didn't like the disrespect they were showing. Go shop, come on, let's buy something as a souvenir. She walked around behind him while he looked at the things in the store, saw a woman coming right towards her, who was actually looking right at her. A little unusual, could already scent the alpha blood in her. Internally sighed, that woman bumped right into her on purpose, really hard, and then gave her a bit of a shove, felt Harper's anger rise and gritted her teeth. Yes, they could see her when they wanted to. Oh, sorry, but I hate bitches, the woman stated, and she recognized the voice from the bar last night. Pulled herself back to standing up properly and refrained from smacking the stupid wolf, though she could feel that Harper wanted to let her have it. Saw that she-wolf turn and look at her like she couldn't do anything about it, only to hear her gasp in pain a second later and whip her head around. Piper also looked and found Brandon glaring right up at that she-wolf. Don't call my mama asterisk, you hoe, he snapped at her. Piper moved herself right between the woman and her son, as the woman and her wolf bristled at the insult. From the sound of it, Brandon had either hit or kicked the she-wolf unexpectedly. Saw those eyes of hers glare right at Piper, glowing a little, trying to scare her off, she imagined, and a low growl issued from her, a warning that her wolf had indeed not liked the insult, even though they had started it. Harper pushed forward instantly at the threat they were posing to Brandon, saw the she-wolf's eyes go wide, and then try to smell her. Piper and Harper rolled their eyes at her, then Harper receded as they turned to Brandon. Come on, son. She took his hand and walked away, right out of the store. Mum, you shouldn't put up with that, he muttered, up to her. Just let it go, she sighed. What did you do to her? I kicked her good and proper, right in the shin, heard the actual smile in his voice. Don't be like that, Brandon. There are enough nasty people in this world. Don't be like one of them. She was nasty first, Mum. I know, don't lower yourself to their level. What was with her eyes? They went from blue to green, he asked. Piper looked down at him now, a little surprised. She thought he had been standing behind her, that he had not seen that she had shielded him from her completely. He must have been looking around her to see the woman. Like yours sometimes go white when you look at me, he stated, looking up at her. Oh. I guess she is a bit different too. Piper sighed. She knew that Harper sometimes pushed forward to watch him. He'd never said anything about it before, thought that he had not noticed it, or that it was normal. We should go back to the hotel. Maybe have a chat about that. He was quiet for the rest of the walk, was standing with her at the elevator, when he looked right up at her. What was she? He suddenly asked. An otherworldly creature, Piper answered him softly after checking there was no one close by to overhear them, waited for people to step out of the elevator when it arrived and ushered Brandon inside. Hit the door's closed button before anyone else could join them, and then sighed. Brandon, what do you think about mythical creatures, real or not? She asked. Like what kind? He asked right back. You tell me. Do you believe in any of them? Watched as he seemed to think about it for a long time. The elevator doors opened on their floor, and right there waiting to get in was the Alpha and his daughter from yesterday. She took Brandon's hand as he stared up at the man. He was quite large and imposing, stood at least 6'6", and was muscled up to the hilt. They stepped aside for her and Brandon to pass. Brandon was looking at the man. He can't be human, Mum. He is way too big. She saw him turn and look at the Alpha. Her eyes moved to the man in question. Saw the Alpha smile as he looked at her son. Alphas did like to be noted as large and imposing. He's not human, she stated calmly. There was no one else in the hallway to hear her. Saw the Alpha's eyes whip right to hers. She nodded slightly to him, A show of respect, not that she respected him or his kind. It was more a gesture on her part to allow him to know that yes, she knew exactly what he was. Then she turned and walked away with Brandon to their room. "What is he?" Brandon asked as they stepped into their suite. "What do you think he is?" She countered and saw him really thinking about it, walked over and sat down on the couch indicated for him to join her. He sat though was still quietly thinking on her question. "Brandon, there are all manner of creatures out there in the world. The humans know nothing of them. Well, they make movies and write books about them, what they believe those creatures are like anyway. Do you know any?" he asked right away. "I do." She nodded. "In fact, some of them have even bought wedding dresses from me." "Is that how you know of them?" "No, son." She shook her head. "Guess it was time to have that conversation. I am one, so are you in fact. Though you will not get your wolf until later in life." She admitted to him what he was. He was just looking at her now, didn't seem all that shocked. "I am a werewolf, as will you be," she told him. He seemed more curious than worried. Piper and Harper realized, watched him as he thought about what she had just told him. Can your wolf talk to you?" he asked a minute later. "Yes, her name is Harper." Piper nodded. "She has the white eyes, right?" "Yes, do you want to see her?" Piper asked now. If he was curious, she could help with that. "Can I?" "Not in wolf form, but she can step forward in a manner of speaking and even talk to you, will sound gravelly to you. Do you want to meet her?" Piper could feel Harper sitting up inside her mind now. Waiting on their son's answer, they watched as he turned to look right at them, tilted his head to the side a little and just stared at them for a good 30 seconds, then nodded at her. Harper pushed forward instantly to look right at him, wanted to see him, wanted him to see her. She smiled down at him, and he even moved closer to her, really looked up at her, didn't even flinch when she reached out and tousled his hair. "Hello, Brandon," she said in her gravelly wolf's voice. Saw him smile and then chuckle. She chortled right back at him and then started to tickle him, till he was laughing and hitting and kicking at her, trying to shove her away and make her stop. It was really good to see their son accept her wolf so easily. Piper watched as Harper picked him up and pulled him into her lap and cuddled him openly. She had used to do it a lot, all the time when he was little, but when he'd gotten older, only did it when he was half asleep. Now she would be able to do it all the time, whenever she wanted to. Piper liked that, and she could feel just how happy Harper was about it as well. Harper relinquished control back to Piper, and she smiled down at Brandon. He smiled right back. "Now, you know you can't go and tell anyone. No humans, right?" "All right," he nodded, though he sounded a little disappointed to her. "I'm sorry, Brandon. They just wouldn't understand or be able to handle it." He just nodded. Why don't we live with other wolves? Or do we all live alone on our own?" Piper sighed. "No, they don't live alone. Most wolves live in what is called a pack. I chose to live away for my own reasons. It's better for Harper and I this way, to live on our own. Hard to explain, but I will when you're older, when you're an adult," she told him. "So, you'll not go back to wherever you were or came from?" he asked softly, seemed very curious. "No." Piper shook her head as pain touched her. "They could never go back to painful, I guess, though. One day you could go there, when you're an adult. Though, I don't know if you'd be accepted." Watched him just shrug. "Then is you and me, Mum." "Always." He hugged her. "Let's get dinner. I'm starving hungry." Piper hugged him back. "Me too," she said. "Let's order lots of food." She was glad that he seemed to understand, even without all the information. Perhaps it was simply because it was the life they lived, and so he was used to it, liked his life, his friends. Didn't want that to change. Chapter 6. Bradley POV. Bradley was standing inside Piper Harper's store, Goddess Gowns. He wondered if she'd named the store after their moon goddess, or if it was one of the human world things, where women were promoting themselves and being encouraged to believe they were goddesses themselves and should be treated as such. He knew the human world could be very cruel and savage, just like the wolfen world could. Although once mated off she-wolves were generally treated as precious by their mates, not often did one suffer abuse after marking and mating. It did happen occasionally, but nowhere as often as in the human world. Unlike in the human world, where men would beat their wives, abuse and demoralize them, killing them even, cheat profusely, the wolfen world was much nicer to their females. Bradley was curious about the store's name, but mostly he was curious about why she was out here alone and with her scent masked. He stood staring at Izzy, who was wearing a tag that read assistant manager. She was about 5'7", had blonde shoulder-length hair that had been straightened and was tucked back behind one ear. Her lips were set in a thin line as her dark brown eyes glared right at him. She had already told him on the phone that Piper Harper was not there, and now had told him to his face that same statement. She appeared more than annoyed by his presence in the store. The moment he had stepped inside the store and her eyes had fallen on him, she had frowned right at him. Her smile and friendly demeanor had disappeared in an instant. There were 2 other women currently working in the store as well, and both of them had smiled right at him. There were 4 different bridal parties in the store right this minute as well, with brides trying on dresses. He'd pulled her away from her actual job, and this Izzy was showing him just how unhappy she was with him about it. Though he had gotten smiles from the other employees and most of the blushing brides, and their family and friends with them, they were all human and his good looks drew their undivided attention. He, however, was not interested in any of them. No human girl had ever drawn his attention. There was nothing in this store that interested him, well, nothing but finding Piper Harper, that was, who for all intensive purposes passed herself off as a human instead of a she-wolf. A lone she-wolf out here in the middle of the human world at that. They could not find a pack affiliation to her company anywhere, and all werewolves did have one. It was the wolfen law that all pack companies or businesses in the human world, no matter how big or how small, were registered. So he was curious about that as well. Usually there was a tiny wolfen pack crest on the company logo that indicated a wolfen store. But not this store, not on the website either. And none of the staff wore a pack pin. From what he recalled yesterday, neither had Piper Harper, which was very odd. A pack pin was usually required. He was curious about that as well. Bradley knew she was a wolf, had gotten that from the low growl she had emitted yesterday, aimed right at him, though that to now confused him completely why they had growled at him. He'd been angry and irritated, but had not actually posed a physical threat to them. There was no call for it at all. Yes, he'd come in hot-headed and ticked off, spoiling for a fight, though only a verbal one, not an actual physical fight, and had been taken aback by her reaction to him, completely surprised by the white wolf eyes that had suddenly peered back at him, though he had not initially realized they were wolf's eyes, not until that growl had come from her, then he'd known what she was. If she had not growled right at him, he'd likely still not know what she was at all. If, as Hadley said, she'd responded to him like a mate, and more he thought about it, he had to agree with his little sister, she had. Though why her wolf would growl at him and Benson if they were her mate, they did not understand that at all. Found a hand in his face and fingers were being snapped right at him. He'd allowed his thoughts to wander too far for too long, it seemed. Hey, like I said, Piper isn't here. You're interrupting business. Izzy's words were clipped, and she sounded very annoyed with him, that he'd not believed her the first time, or that he'd zoned out on her. He wasn't entirely sure. Where is she? If not here, he commented, trying to keep all irritation out of his voice. Gone away for the long weekend. And just for your information, she stated a little on the sarcastic side, she won't be working from this store for several weeks, stood staring at him pointedly, as if she had finished with him, that she would not be telling him anything else, almost as if to say get out. Bradley stared right back at her. She did not intimidate him, no human ever could. He could well imagine that expression and her demeanor would scare off quite a few humans, but not him. Asked about making an appointment to see her when she got back, instead of leaving. To which Izzy declined him right away. This made him frown. The woman didn't even check a diary or on the computer for Piper's schedule, to see when she would be available next. I'll wait, find a time in her schedule, he offered, though he could feel his patience starting to wear thin at this woman's attitude. Watched as she pursed her lips and folded her arms across her chest. She said nothing for a full minute before telling him, "I can't do that." Piper is solidly booked for the next 6 months and is not currently taking on new clients at this time. Right, he'd stated he did not believe her at all. It was pretty clear that Piper Harper was avoiding him and had instructed her assistant manager to block him and his attempts to see her. He did not like it. If she was, as Hadley said, his mate. She was now actively avoiding him, turned his eyes to the woman's office up in the loft space, and then her studio. Both the doors were closed and the lights were out. But that didn't actually mean she wasn't up there, and he was obviously not going to smell her if she was still masking her scent. Seemed to always be doing that. She's not up there. Izzy's tone was cold and rude now. "I'd like to see for myself." Bradley turned his eyes on the woman. He was not going to take no for an answer. She seemed to get the message. "Fine, go and check for yourself." She shrugged and waved a hand towards the stairs. Bradley did just that. Opened her office door first. It was unlocked. Did not step inside the room. Had the feeling that Izzy was watching him from downstairs, like a hawk just waiting for him to step out of sight, so she could call the human police on him. Report he'd done something like steal or break something in Piper's office. She was like a bloody bouncer, he thought. Piper's office was quite spacious, a single large glass and steel desk on the left side of the room, with a white leather chair behind it. On the wall behind her desk were framed prints of models wearing her designs, he presumed. There was a glass sliding door that he knew led out onto a balcony, also knew from yesterday that there was a table and chair set out there, for sitting and drinking coffee, he supposed. There was a coffee cup on her desk. To the right of the room were awards on shelves above a comfortable-looking white leather lounge that matched her office chair, and there was a glass and steel coffee table not unlike her desk. A small stack of magazines were fanned on that table, and under it on a shelf, he noted, were a few children's books, both for reading and coloring in, along with a selection of high-quality textures and pencils, an odd thing to have in one's office, he thought absently. Closed the door and moved to her studio. The studio was also unlocked. If she was away, shouldn't they both be locked up? Perhaps Izzy had access to them both for some reason. There was a design desk to the right with many pencils and tools and containers along the back of it. A stool with a black seat on roller wheels, several design pads on a shelf, and a bin and a shredder to the left of the desk. There was a tall wing-backed chair in a soft pink color, sitting next to the mannequin with the dress she had been working on yesterday when he was here. Behind that and all the way around the room stood reams of material, silk, satin, lace, all in varying shades of white to ivory, silvers to black and soft pinks even. There were shelves on the left-hand wall filled with clear boxes of buttons, ribbons, zippers, beads, and all sorts of other things. He stepped back out of the doorway and closed the door. It did not look like she had been here, not that he would be able to tell, but not even Izzy's scent lingered in either of the rooms, which meant she'd not been up here at all either today. So it was likely that Izzy had been telling him the truth. Piper was not here, had not been here. Could very well actually be away for the weekend. Bradley contemplated leaving her a note, for when she got back and his number at the pack, to ask her to call him, could leave her his direct number for his Alpha office or his mobile even for that matter, but after only a moment's thought. With her reaction to him and how her assistant manager was with him, he didn't think she would use it. Headed back down the stairs, Bradley didn't understand this she-wolf. Why, if she was the girl that had fled his pack, had uttered her rejection without him knowing, why she'd done it in the first place? Why did she still hide herself from him? Did she really not want to be his mate? And if so, why not just tell him to his face? That was how it was supposed to be done. It was unlikely to work at all without it being face to face. How could he even acknowledge her as his mate or accept her rejection if he had no idea who she was at all? It was very confusing for him. To all of them who knew about it. He was also not some mean, nasty alpha, felt he was actually a fair and approachable man. Strict, yes, but no one in his pack feared him as far as he knew. The one to confirm for him what his pack Dr. Samuel had told him he believed was going on, that the pain he was suffering that night was that it looked as though he was suffering from a rejection of a mate bond being torn from him, but was incomplete. Had been Eddie, his gamma. Apparently, Eddie had felt her pain at the point of rejection when she had uttered it or something like that. While Cooper and Harry had been getting him to the PAC's hospital, not knowing what was wrong with him. They had all thought that someone had bloody well poisoned him. He'd had thought that initially. The girl in his bed had been scent masked, so it was possible. But no, Eddie had not followed his alpha in pain, had bolted off on a mission of his own that night, trying to get to the girl, but he had not been able to scent the girl out. Had only been able to track her pain. As her gamma, he was attached to her, with that Luna to gamma bond. Eddie had also felt her sever from him when she'd rejected the PAC, and had known right away what it had meant, that she had gone rogue and bolted away from the PAC. Though that had not deterred the man at all. He'd even gone out into rogue territory on his own to hunt her down and try and bring her back. Had found the border patrol man, who'd reported to Cooper, seeing he was out of action at the time, about a girl who had just gone rogue, had severed herself from the PAC right before his very eyes and had then just run away. Eddie had come back empty-handed that night. They all knew females didn't do well, out in rogue territory. Eddie had not been able to scent the girl, and the poor description he'd gotten off the patrol man had not helped him either. The description had been about yay high, of thin build. Eddie had guessed 5'8" from the height of the man's hand, and she'd had brown messy hair and brown eyes. That was it. There were no distinguishing features, not even what her wolf looked like, though they'd found out upon further questioning of said patroller. The next day she'd not shifted into her wolf, had run off in human form. Bradley pulled himself from his thoughts. Piper Harper had brown hair and brown eyes, and was about the right height too. He looked at Izzy as he reached the bottom of the stairs and sighed, frustrated by the whole thing. Satisfied, she'd shot right at him, which only made him frown at her attitude. "I need to speak with her." Bradley held out his business card, saw the woman look at it briefly, but did not attempt to take it from him. Sighed again, a little on the heavy side this time. "I understand that I upset her yesterday. I would like to apologize for that." He placed his card on the counter she was standing behind and tapped it. "Give it to her," he stated, staring right at her. Then headed out of the store. Bradley's wolf's hearing picked up the sound of his business card hitting the bin and her softly muttered words, "Never going to happen, asshole," right before the door closed shut. He had let it go, was very unhappy about it, but had to let it go. Hoped the woman would change her mind and fish that card out and tell Piper he wanted to apologize. It was also likely that this Izzy and Piper were friends, and he had seen the pain Piper was in yesterday, could well imagine her state when she returned to the store, after he had left with Hadley. It was completely possible that Piper had told her assistant manager that she actually knew him and didn't want to see him ever again. He didn't know, but it did seem that way to him right this minute. Headed off to the waiting car down the street, Cooper was sitting behind the wheel. Bradley had not wanted to scare her off with his whole unit stalking into her store behind him, so he had opted to go in on his own. She'd already run off once, hell twice now. In all likelihood. Got in the car. Not there, gone away for the long weekend apparently. He answered his beta's unspoken question. "Do you believe that?" "I honestly don't know. But she is definitely not there. I can tell you Izzy, her store manager," he shook his head, "doesn't like me at all. I tried being nice to her, didn't lose my temper. It made no difference. Wouldn't even make me an appointment to see her. Apparently her books are closed for the next 6 months. Also won't be working from this store for weeks." He was more than frustrated right now, he realized. "She's bolted, in other words." Cooper sighed. "I don't know." Bradley stared out the window. "Might not be able to catch her now." There was silence in the car for several minutes. "Maybe it's time to let go, Brad." "Maybe," he answered softly. She had run off and rejected him for no apparent reason. He'd never accepted it. There had to be a reason, and he wanted to know what it was. So did his wolf, Benson for that matter. If they had a mate, they wanted to at least talk to her before accepting her rejection. Have her explain it to them. Maybe it was a misunderstanding or something. His wolf was quiet right this minute, had been annoyed with the girl's reaction yesterday. Disrespected him had made him huff in annoyance, in fact. But then when Hadley had stated the girl had reacted like a mate would, Benson had stalked off to the back of his mind and not come back until they were in her store just now. When Bradley thought about it, the woman's reaction to him, The way she had looked at Hadley touching him. The fact that Hadley had gone into the store for a Luna gown, if of course, she was mated of to an alpha. It would likely seem to Piper that Hadley was his mate. She had come here to Piper's store with Cooper, the pack beta. Then he himself had turned up with Hadley, demanding that Piper make Hadley the dress she wanted. It probably did look like Hadley was his mate. They did not look anything alike. She had a mass of dark red curly hair to his brown. Hadley looked just like her mother, but had his father's dark blue eyes, whereas he looked like his father, but had his mother's eyes. If this is what Piper did think, it would account for the pain that he saw in her when she was looking at him, especially when she saw Hadley touching him as she had. Would have looked loving and familiar. He knew as he looked out the window watching the streets roll by that he was not ready to give up on her yet. If she had been in pain, then it was likely that their mate bond was still intact, and in effect, that rejection she had uttered had not held. She still felt it, not that he could. But that didn't really matter, he'd never known about it, only she had for some silly reason. If this Piper Harper was once one of his pack members, he had to find out how old she was? And come back and approach her as to why she had hid from him? Why she had rejected him? It didn't make sense to him at all. Wondered if she'd seen him with Biancia and maybe that had been enough for her to reject him. Didn't like it, or thought he would reject her, who knew? Only she did until he could hunt her down and get those answers. Even now he barely recalled what the girl in his bed had looked like that night, but he had not forgotten how it had felt to touch her. She'd been hot, felt so damned hot to touch. It was like nothing he'd ever felt before. He'd not been able to control himself. Even Benson had pushed more stamina at him that night, to make it last longer, to enjoy it himself. His wolf never got involved in Asterisk, just turned a blind eye to it mostly as they were not his mate, but not that night. Bradley had lost all control and mated the hell out of her, and now all he recalled was how tiny she was, very thin, not that had curbed his appetite where she was concerned. He did recall holding her down, all dominant, to continue mating her at the end. Could only hope he'd not actually hurt the girl. Though it hadn't sounded as though he had, that did not mean he hadn't. Bradley did recall it had been her first time, remembered that much, had loved the thought of being her first at the time too. He was now very disappointed in himself about how he'd not appreciated her more in his bed that night. Hated his words to her. At the time he'd not thought anything of them, but after Eddie had explained what he'd felt. How Bradley recalled how she felt to the touch, how much he had wanted her and lost all control, how Benson had gotten involved, and then what Doc had said. He knew those words were absolutely horrid, and for her to hear them would likely have been very painful to hear. He could not imagine how much those words he'd uttered would have hurt her. He knew he would not have liked hearing them from his mate, not if he'd known who she was and she knew nothing. If their roles had been reversed, it might very well have been the thing that caused the woman to utter that rejection. "Let's go home, Co-op," he sighed. Bradley had nothing to confirm anything at this point. He likely needed more information, likely if she was constantly scent masked, he was actually going to have to lay his hands right on her, to see if she felt the same as the one in his bed that night. And getting that close to her could be difficult, very difficult. She was currently away, so he had at least 3 days to try and figure out what to do, figure out if she was the same girl. Piper did fit the brief description, but so did half the Wolfen population for that matter. He sighed. Chapter 7. Piper POV. Piper and Brandon were having breakfast in the hotel's restaurant, as were many other wolves to her dissatisfaction. She, however, did not pay them the slightest bit of attention, and they did not send her as wolf, so left her alone as well. Well, most of them anyway. Brandon was sitting looking about, all curious now at those very large and imposing men around him, sitting at various tables. Some of those tables had she-wolves at them, likely the next generation alphas to their pack. It did seem to be an alpha meeting place. There were a few betas she could send out, but most were alphas and their heirs from what she could tell. Piper had reminded him not to say anything or ask any questions out in public, only to bring it up inside their suite, or when they got home, to never say anything to his friends at school. He had agreed and nodded his head, but he did seem a little disappointed. Now sitting in this room, he was definitely curious about those around him. Excuse me. Piper's eyes moved to the woman approaching her, and she sighed internally. It was the same young girl from the other day that had approached her at the elevator. "You're Piper Harper, yes?" she asked. Why she asked, Piper didn't know. She had spoken with her already and knew the answer. Or perhaps it was just that because she didn't send to the woman, she couldn't hold on to the memory of who she was. Who knew? "Yes," she answered plainly. Brandon whined instantly. "You said no work." "I'm not going to work, Brandon," she told him. This would also inform the she-wolf now standing next to her table that she was not here on business. "I'm sorry to interrupt your breakfast, but I was just hoping to take a few minutes of your time," the she-wolf piped in. "I'm sorry, miss. I am on holiday with my son. Please call one of my stores and make yourself an appointment," Piper told her calmly. "But you're right here." The woman was now frowning down at her, obviously used to getting what she wanted, being alpha-blooded. Brandon whined again at her. She looked right at him. He was starting to get upset. "I'm sorry," she told the she-wolf. Stood up. "Come on, Brandon. Let's go." Watched him stand as well. She took his hand in hers and stepped around the she-wolf, only to have her grab her arm and halt her. She turned her eyes on the woman's hand. Bloody alphas always thought that they could have whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it, didn't care about anyone else's lives, wants or needs. Selfish, all of them. Looked right from that hand on her arm to the woman very pointedly, showing her dislike at being held up. Still she didn't let go. "I'm turning 18 soon, and I wanted." Piper cut her clean off. Wasn't even 18 yet. This was bloody ridiculous. "I don't care," she snapped and pulled her arm from the woman's hand. "It is very rude to touch people, and even ruder to interrupt one's family holiday. Are you so self-absorbed, so high and mighty that you only care about yourself? It's very selfish." Saw the she-wolf's eyes go very wide. Likely she'd never been spoken to like this, admonished for her behavior. "I also told you the other day, did I not? Find a husband before a dress. Are you so desperate for a man to touch you? Go pick one." Piper waved her hand around the room, indicating to all the alpha males and betas in the room, who were now sitting and listening to her. She realized. The room had gone quiet. "I'm sure one of them will touch you if you ask." "You're so mean," the she-wolf gasped at her, and then turned and stalked off hurriedly. "Yes, she's a real bitch." Piper heard another state, didn't even care to look to see who it was. She did not need nor want wolves in her life. Just turned and walked with Brandon out of the restaurant. "I'm sorry, Mum," he murmured a minute later. "It's fine, Brandon, I don't need people like them in our lives, or my business for that matter," and she didn't. She was very well known. She and Brandon would never want for anything. She could provide him with all he would ever need for the rest of his life. They had more money than she could ever spend. "I'm used to rich, arrogant prima donnas and their aristocrat families. You just have to stand up to them and make them realize there are people out there that can stand up to them and say no to them." She walked him through the hotel. They were already dressed for the day, headed to the ski-out part of the hotel, and got their gear to head out for the day. Brandon, however, was quiet for well over an hour, then on a ski lift heading back up the mountain. He looked right at her. "Do they always treat you like this?" he asked quietly. "Yes, unfortunately," she answered simply. "It's why I left." "Then I don't like them either," she heard him mutter. He sounded somewhat sad and annoyed at the same time. Likely wanted to understand and be with his own kind. Werewolves were very social creatures. It's why he had so many friends. She herself knew plenty of people, but only really trusted Izzy. That girl and her had things in common. Both left their families over a man, were just trying to live their lives peacefully and as they wanted to, without being controlled by the leader of their family. For Izzy, that was her father. For Piper, that was her old alpha. Telling Brandon that she'd left due to being treated this way was a good enough reason for him to believe. It's why she left. She would have to tell him the truth one day. Especially if he ever comes across his mate. Hell, she would tell him before then. Didn't want him to find his mate and not have her recognize who he was and suffer what she had. Better for him to find a nice human to settle down with. But not till he was 18 would she have to worry about that, so she still had 11 years to figure that one out, she guessed. She could just move them to a country without wolves. There were a few of them. She knew that Australia, New Zealand, Africa, and most of the southern hemisphere countries did not have natural wolf populations, as far as she knew, so it would be unlikely that werewolves would be in them, to much risk if a human saw a wolf. Likely to be hunted by humans and killed or separated from the pack, put in a zoo or shipped off to a country that has a natural wolf population. Piper hugged him to her and told him not to worry about it. Most of them didn't even know what she was anyway. He'd frowned up at her and been about to ask her more questions. When the lift had reached the drop-off zone, she smiled right at him, race you to the bottom, trying to waylay or distract him. Knew he wouldn't be able to resist the actual challenge. It was in his nature to want to be the fastest and the strongest. Kept him hot on her heels and only let him shoot past her on the slope right near the end of the run. Heard him cheer as he shot past her, so excited that he'd beat her, pipped her at the post. Made her happy, and by the time they hit the bottom his questions were all gone. He was laughing and telling her she would never beat him, that he was the best. She herself laughed, and then they had raced off to the chair lifts to go again. Tried to keep the rest of the day light and fun for him, continued to challenge him and race him at every turn, pushing him to beat her and only letting him right at the end. Even allowed herself to fall on her backside as though she'd overbalance to let him shoot past her, heard him whoop with happiness, and even pretended to mutter unknowingly about it when really she was having a great time with him. Let him tease her and call her funny names, saw him smile and be proud of himself, that he was the better of the two of them at snowboarding. They headed over to the half-pipe later in the afternoon and she was smiling and filming him. He was really having a good time on their holiday, and she was really happy too. All her cares from the past week had seemed to vanish now. Her boy, the one and only thing she needed in her life. She could live without everything else as long as she had him, and he was happy. Found herself yanked roughly around and away from filming him. An alpha had latched onto her arm, and he was glaring down at her furiously. It was the girl's father, and she knew he was here on her behalf. To defend his child, of course no alpha could do wrong, tried to yank herself from his grip, but it was too strong and he wasn't about to let go. "How dare you insult my daughter?" he grated out at her, his light blue eyes boring into hers. Harper bristled instantly inside her mind. Piper grated right back. I tried to be polite, but she was rude, didn't care about interrupting my family at all. Pulled at his grip again to no avail. "Get your hands off of me. You will apologize to her, or I will make you." Felt his aura suddenly roll at her. He was trying to scare her, as any human would be by his aura. Harper snarled all aggression inside her mind. Even as a rogue, an alpha could affect them, though not to make them bow down, just brought about fear mostly and made them run away. It's how most of them protected their packs. She and Harper, however, were not about to do that. She should apologize to me first. To my son, who she upset, she shot right back at him. Or are you just as arrogant and selfish as well? Heard his wolf snarl at her low and menacingly at her words. They did not like being talked to like this, not used to people challenging their authority. Heard Harper snarl right back at him just as menacing. He looked more than surprised by this. Had no idea who or what he was dealing with, thought as they all did, she was human. "Get away from my mum." She heard Brandon's voice, turned and looked at him, was damned near horrified at the sight. He was running towards her, only meters away, and he had his snowboard in his hands, like he was about to beat this alpha with it. "Brandon, stop." She yanked her arm free, or the alpha himself let go at the sight of her son coming at him. She shot in front of him, knelt down and put her hands on his arms. "Calm down," gasped when he pulled himself from her hands and hurled that snowboard right at the alpha. Turned to see what happened. The man simply knocked it away, but the boy had his undivided attention now. "I'm sorry," she hurried out. "He doesn't know." She tried to explain to the alpha. "Get away from her." Brandon suddenly yelled up at him. To her horror, there was a gravelly sound to his voice, and when she turned back to look right at him, his eyes were white like Harper's. His alpha wolf had emerged and was pushing forward, trying to assert himself against a fully realized, fully grown alpha at that. Grabbed his face and pulled it right to hers. "Shoo, Brandon, look at me." Focus on me. She tried to calm him. His wolf stood there snarling at her, at the situation, unhappy she was trying to make it back down. Heard the alpha behind her snort, seemed amused by the situation. But it was not funny to her, not at all. If he shifted here and now in front of all the humans, S***T would hit the fan. They didn't know about wolves. Calm down, she tried again, didn't know what his wolf's name was to help the situation. Felt Harper push forward to look right at her son, and gained his attention finally. His eyes moved to hers wolf to wolf. She touched his face and asked him to calm down herself. Tear receded and let Brandon come back. Brandon's alpha wolf stood staring at her for a full minute, then snorted in annoyance before letting go of his control and allowing Brandon to come forward again. Brandon stared at her. Piper was given back control herself, saw him look a bit confused by what had just happened and then looked past her to the alpha. She knew he was still standing there, she could still smell him. Pulled him into a hug and told him everything was going to be all right, picked him up and turned to face that alpha. She knew he was not going to take kindly to this, but she couldn't do anything more than apologize to him. Her eyes met his. The man shook his head and sighed. He's very young. Piper knew this, knew that he was referring to the emergence of his alpha wolf, likely understood from her reaction to it, that he also understood this was the first time it had happened as well. Who is the boy's father? He asked. What does it matter to you? She asked quietly. Oh, I think it will matter. From what I know of you, Piper Harper. A human wedding dress designer. Then he lowered his voice. Not so human are you, he shook his head. She just stood staring at him, there was nothing to say. His eyes, unusual, don't see that often. He reached down and picked up the snowboard Brandon had hurled at him. Perhaps you and I should have a chat. I think I would prefer not. Oh, I'm sure you would not. But if you say no, I might just act according to the challenge your boy just issued. Piper felt fear at his words. He's just a little boy, she gasped. You can't be serious. Come and chat with me. I'll let it slide, he stated and waved a hand for her to walk ahead of him. She was going to have no choice and knew it. Brandon's wolf had just issued an alpha challenge to the man. Likely he had no idea of the consequences. I have my board to collect yet. Where is your gear? I will get it, he commented casually. She pointed it out to him and watched as he actually walked over and grabbed it, carried her and Brandon's boards like it was nothing, though to him it wouldn't be. He followed closely behind her as she made her way off the slope. He even checked their gear in for them, allowed them to change their shoes. Before clamping a hand around her arm. Let's go and have a nice cup of coffee. Get the boy a hot chocolate, he stated calmly as he led her away. Piper nor Harper liked it. Brandon was still very quiet and had yet to say a word since she'd picked him up. He'd been hugged into her the whole time, likely frightened of what his wolf had just done. Forcing Brandon to the back of his own mind, out of the blue, his wolf had probably scared his own human counterpart. She needed to get him back to their room and ask him if he was all right, try to explain a bit how it worked, though he was so very young, she'd not expected this at all. It was too soon. It probably only happened due to the threat another alpha was posing to her at the time. Forced his wolf to emerge. The alpha picked a table well away from others and ordered 2 cappuccinos and a hot chocolate from the waitress, then sat and looked right at her, then at Brandon, who was on her lap still. Frowned deeply at her for a long moment, as though he was trying to figure her out. That is the first time he has appeared, yes? Piper looked around the cafe. This was not the place to be having this conversation, out in public, though as she looked around she noted the place was nearly empty now. I've cleared the cafe, he commented. I own it. Answer the question. Yes, she stated simply. How old is the boy? Why do you want to know? I'll apologize, we'll leave, she told him. If he owned this cafe, it was likely he owned the resort, and she was in his territory. Not that this place felt like a pack would feel. How old is the boy? He asked her again. I'm 7, it was Brandon. Leave my mum alone, he suddenly yelled at the alpha. Saw the alpha's eyes move right to him. Feisty and very protective already. That is going to be an issue. Who are you? Piper asked. She needed to know what she was up against or in for, she supposed. Alpha Timothy Avery of the Ice Moon Pack, and you are? Piper Harper, she stated flatly. She'd never heard of the Ice Moon Pack. Must be Canadian. He did have the Canadian accent. What pack, he asked, or are you packless? If she admitted to being a rogue, he could kill her and get away with it. That is none of your business, she told him and watched as he leaned back in his chair and just stared right at her, looked at Brandon. The man knew he was alpha-blooded. That was why he had insisted on this little chat they were having. Coffee and hot chocolate arrived. His eyes moved back to hers. Then he simply pulled out his phone and started using it. Who knew what or why? He could be texting for backup for all she knew. Several minutes passed, then he put his phone down on the table and slid it across to her. That's your company, right? She glanced at it. It was her Goddess Gowns website. Yes, so. It bears no Wolfen Pack logo or identification mark at all. That's against the rules, the Wolfen laws, he informed her. She knew that, but with no scent, no council would see her as a wolf. In your country maybe, she stated, hoping he wouldn't know about hers. Saw the man smile. You just right? We are all ruled by one kingdom. The laws are all the same. I believe you are either packless, therefore a rogue, or your pack is breaking the law. Which is it? Why do you care? She asked, annoyed with him. What do you want? He must have an agenda. Saw his smile turn to a smirk. He knew she was not so dumb. What do I want? I want my daughter to have the world. Which I believe includes a dress by Piper Harper, which you have rudely refused to do at every turn. Her jaw tightened. I did tell her to call my store and make an appointment. I would see her then. But you're here now and so are we, he shrugged. Brandon got off of her lap and sat in the chair next to her, but his eyes were on her. She had promised not to work this weekend. I promised my son no work this weekend, she told Alpha Timothy honestly. I understand that life can be difficult. But you can't always have what you want. If you sit with my daughter, listen to her, design her the dress she wants, I'll let you go, he indicated to Brandon, though I am pretty certain. Somewhere out there, right now or very soon, there is going to be one very agitated alpha wolf, looking for what is his. Piper did not say anything. If she said there wouldn't be, he could take that two ways. One, the boy's father was dead, or two, she was the alpha, not the boy's father. Left that well enough alone. He did not know what she was, couldn't smell her, and she knew it. Even if he saw Harper's eyes he would not. He couldn't not without being able to scent her blood, and that was not going to happen. I'll give you two options then, he told her when she refused to say anything. One, design my daughter a dress today, this evening, or two, I report you to the council in your own country, and they deal with you. Piper stared at him. She had no idea what the Wolfen Council would do with her. She doubted very much at all, as a lone rogue. It was likely they would just confiscate all her money and make her register her business, give them part of her profit line. She did not think they would actually care about one rogue, who'd made a nice living for herself. Punishment even for a rogue is likely imprisonment, separated from your boy. In case you are wondering, they will also pry out of you who his father is and likely hand him over to the man. Her eyes went wide, felt Harper whimper instantly. They did not want to be separated from their son. Turned her eyes and looked right at Brandon, saw him looking right up at her now. Scared, he understood what that meant. They had no one. It was just the two of them. It's okay, Mum, she heard him tell her. Just go and work for him. He's a smart boy. Alpha Timothy smiled right at her. I don't have any of my supplies here, she half graded out. I'll organize something. Come to my suite in 1 hour if you're late. I will follow through. Oh, and bring the boy. He intrigues me. Then he wrote down on a piece of paper his room number and handed it to her. 1 hour, Piper. I mean that, he commented as he walked away from her. What choice did she have? None. Chapter 8. Bradley POV. Back in his pack, Bradley was sitting at his desk researching into wolves with wide eyes, had a stack of books from the pack's library archives on his desk about wolf types. Many to go, though. He'd sent Hadley, who was still upset, up to her room to unpack, told her he would try again with Piper Harper, that perhaps getting an appointment under her mother's name or someone else's here in the pack might resolve the issue. Hadley had just nodded, though she looked doubtful to him. She had already asked him why a she-wolf would run away from her mate. He'd not been able to answer that question for her. Didn't want the girl to blame herself for making Piper think she was his mate. Bradley had already gone through the pack's database, searched for the name Piper Harper, had come up empty-handed. There was not even a family with the last name Harper in his pack. He was more confused than before. Maybe it simply wasn't the same girl. He had sent Eddie off to bring Renee to his office. She'd stocked Piper Harper gowns for 3.5 years, if he recalled correctly, had said she'd even met the woman. He wanted to know how and when. So, while he was waiting on Renee, he was doing research, as was his beta Cooper. Though Cooper had told him, White Wolf Eyes was itching inside his mind, like he'd seen it or read it somewhere, just couldn't quite latch onto it. Same as Bradley for that matter. Renee walked into his office with Eddie next to her. She smiled right at him like always, and then sat herself down in the chair on the other side of his large oak desk. No such luck with Piper Harper, Alpha? Not in the making of a dress for Hadley, no. I did actually get to lay eyes on the woman, he commented. How is Piper doing? It's been a long time since I saw her. Bradley frowned at her words. How well did you know her? Did she ever come here to the pack? She is a wolf, I found out, he told her. Yes. I know that. Did you not? She was now frowning at him, seemed confused by his words. No, I did not. Even Cooper here could not pick up what she was. Her scent was masked the whole time. Saw as Renee raised an eyebrow, and then looked from him to Cooper and back again. Did not look shocked by the news he'd just imparted, just appeared curious that they brought it up or that maybe they should have known this already. Did she come to this pack? Or did you go to her pack to purchase her brand? Renee frowned deeply at him now. Alpha, why would you not know the answer to that yourself? You approved yourself, her working for me in my store. Piper Harper used to live here. That snapped his head up. What? He'd already checked on that. It was the very first thing he'd done when he got home, trying to verify if she could be his mate. There was no record of her here in this pack. Born into this pack, I believe, Renee stated. I thought she'd up and left because you'd approved her owning a store in the human world. Her label sold very well, could barely keep her dresses on the racks. Though I was disappointed she never told me and left without so much as a goodbye. Piper Harper sold out here in this pack. Well, the label back then just stated Piper. I guess she changed it when she became big. Wait, start again. This, Piper Harper, is a pack member. I didn't sense any connection to her. I certainly didn't give her permission to open a human world store, but that would make sense of her reaction to Cooper and himself, her old Alpha and his beta turning up inside of her store. Could have freaked her out. There is no record of a Piper Harper, none with that name has ever lived here in this pack. I checked already, he told her. That would be because her last name is not actually Harper. It's Whitlock. Her name is Piper Whitlock. Whitlock, it was Cooper, and he was on his feet now, clearly something he recalled. Piper Whitlock, anything you can tell me, Renee, about that she-wolf? Looked sickly a lot of the time. Not when she started working for me, but by the end, she was thin and frail looking, looked exhausted all the time I guess, dark circles under her eyes, pale. I did ask her if she was all right on many occasions. She told me that she just didn't sleep well most nights. Did you believe that? He asked. Not particularly. But I couldn't find out anything, like I told you. She was a quiet girl, just sat and worked in my back room, day in day out, rarely spoke at all. Bradley sighed. Her family would be on file, I presume. I did not run in the same social group, she shrugged, never saw them myself. All right, thank you, Renee, you can go. Watched as the woman stood. Alpha, if I may ask a question. He nodded. If you didn't agree to Piper leaving the pack, then how is it she did? That is the question. Possibly went rogue, Renee. She nodded, but then just turned and headed for the door. What is it, Renee? It was Eddie who asked the question. She looked sickly. It got gradually worse over the years. Now that I think about it. Could be indicative of a rejected mate. One that did not cope with the rejection well. All in the room were staring at her now. I've heard, Alpha, a rejection can kill one. Also, if she couldn't cope, it could likely be why she up and left without warning. Just had enough maybe, I guess, seeing her mate who reject her with another, that could turn a she-wolf rogue I guess. Bradley was frowning at her now. She was right on that front. Watched the woman walk out of his office. Found both Cooper and Eddie's eyes on him questioningly. I did not reject the girl. Never even knew if that is the case, he muttered. They both knew this. He didn't appreciate their looks at all. He turned his attention away from them, somewhat annoyed with both of them, turned it to his computer, and put the name Whitlock into the PAC's database. The computer linked it to 3 names: Talone Taylor, a warrior-ranked man, and his mate Jewel Whitlock, who it stated came from another PAC. She was also warrior-ranked and quite highly ranked at that. They were also both deceased. They did have a child, one Piper Whitlock. Unusual that the girl had her mother's last name still. Also unusual that Jewel never took her mate Talone's name. He opened both their files. Nothing unusual about Talone, though he had been ranking up every year and had been well on his way to elite status by the look of it. A good fighter, with a large gray and black wolf, named Harvey. Jewel Whitlock, also highly ranked, very well trained even before she came to his PAC, came from a PAC up north on the other side of the Canadian border, the Ice Moon PAC. Came here at 20 after a mating ball. Her wolf, Pepper, was a smallish silver wolf, and the photo showed she had white eyes, just like Piper's wolf. Piper Whitlock, there was not much information on the girl after her parents died, both in a large rogue attack. She had been 10 at the time, not that her file stated that. He simply recalled their death dates from both her parents' files. There was no record of who she was sent to live with after they died. That was odd in itself. Would likely have to speak with his father on that one. It had been his reign at the time. He would have only been barely 18 himself when that happened. There was an entry about her wolf's emergence. Harper, it read the wolf's name was. The standard paperwork had been filled in, though not by the girl's guardians, he noted, had her own name attached to the report. A description of her wolf had been handwritten, but there was no photo attached. Unusual. Normally a photo would have been taken and uploaded for reference. Piper and Harper, her company, now Piper Harper Designs, was an amalgamation of her and her wolf's name, an interesting idea. Bradley could not find anything about who her guardians had been, or where she lived, did not have anything attached to her name, checked the PAC school records for a Piper Whitlock, and there it was. She had completed her schooling. And the records stated her original home address, where she had lived with her parents before they had died. That made him frown. She couldn't have lived on her own there all that time. Surely his father and stepmother, the Luna by then, would have placed the girl with another family. It was the protocol of all orphan children. And his stepmother was a lovely woman. There was no way he saw her abandoning a child to the PAC. Piper had even been here when he took over, would have been 17 at the time, would have even pledged her loyalty to him. Anyone with a wolf would have had to do it. He could see in her file the paperwork submitted for Piper Whitlock to work at Renee's store. In the PAC's town center, Renee had submitted it herself. Piper had been 17 and a half at the time, worked full-time right away. Her age bothered him greatly. If Piper Harper was indeed Piper Whitlock, and it did now appear she was one and the same, if she was also his mate, she would have been 21 when she left this PAC. Bradley was not at all happy with the information he was reading, the timeline, her condition reported by Renee. Surely it could not be right. 3 years after she turned 18. You could send your mate out once you turned 18, if this was the case? How did he not know who she was for 3 whole years? If she herself had known for 3 years, why didn't she come to him? Surely the girl wasn't silly enough to hide her scent from him for 3 years, if she did know all that time. His eyes widened as he realized the complexity of the situation of it all. Every time he was with another, she would have felt it, painfully so. Regardless of the fact that he did not know. As long as she knew, had scented him out. Anything he did with another she-wolf, inside this PAC or out of it, she would have felt it, all of it, the pains of betrayal each and every single time. Bradley couldn't understand her. Why had she hidden herself from him? Put herself through all that pain, years of it? No wonder she'd looked sickly, as Renee put it. No wonder she was quiet all the time. Closed his eyes, no wonder she had been so tiny. It was likely she had wasted away to nothing over the years. It would literally have been killing her, a very slow, Very painful, agonizingly painful death for her and her wolf, and he'd known nothing about it. She had kept it all from him. He didn't understand, couldn't wrap his brain around it. If this was the situation, it was the reason why she'd rejected him. He'd not even meant to be home that night, the night he'd found this scent-masked girl in his bed. She'd run from his room just minutes before Cooper and Harry had come to his aid. The pack house cameras showed it. She'd had a backpack all ready to go. She'd already made the decision to leave. When he wasn't supposed to be in the pack's territory at that, had likely gone into his room, just to smell his scent, to likely spend one night in his bed, where she belonged. But that night, he and his unit had been attacked on the road by a rogue pack, which had destroyed his car, and they'd been forced to come back to the pack instead. If not for that incident, he'd never have touched her at all. Never in all likelihood been able to understand what had happened to him at all. Wondered now if he would have felt the connection to her sever at all? He likely only felt it, now realized because he'd had his hands on her, she'd been in his bed, and though he'd not known what she was at the time, he'd not been able to control himself with her, and Benson had wanted him to mate her as well. His wolf right this moment was more than annoyed. He was prowling around inside of Bradley's mind. It was very clear to the both of them, now that they had the information, Piper had hidden herself from him for a full 3 years. Had not once come forward, not even so much as presented herself to him initially on the day she had scented him out. Why not? The need to claim your mate was strong, even to those who wanted nothing but to reject the other. They were still drawn to each other, until that rejection was made, even sometimes after the rejection was made and accepted. Hell, Bradley had 2 wolves right here in his pack who hated each other, had outright rejected each other on the day they found out, from his understanding, the actual moment they had realized they were mates. Those 2 had wolf-on-wolf fights on many occasions over the last 2 years, but then were reported to have been seen out in the woods going at it like crazy, having uncontrollably, all raw, animalistic, and needy for each other. Then they were back to hurling insults at each other as they walked away. Bradley had actually seen it himself once, come across the 2 of them yelling and screaming at each other about how they hated the other. All manner of foul words had been thrown about, and he'd thought he was going to have to intervene and separate them once they'd started shoving at each other, and then before he knew it, pants were coming down and underwear had been ripped off, and he'd seen them furiously asterisk each other, screaming and crying out in pleasure, only to go back to calling each other foul names the minute it was over and they'd caught their breath. Had stalked away from each other back to hating each other seemed. They had rejected each other right away, when the girl had turned 18, but could not, it seemed, keep their hands off of each other. It was a crazy, stupid relationship, he thought. Brad was tempted to lock the pair of them up in a cell together, till they sorted it out. But he was actually worried they might kill each other at the same time. Over the past 2 years, the pair of them had actually put each other into the pack's hospital at least twice with their wolf-on-wolf fighting. It was completely insane. He'd never seen anything like it. Had gone to his father for advice about them. His father had sighed and told him to leave it alone, had stated, "They'll likely mate like crazy one day and end up marking each other, and that will solve the issue," is all he'd told Bradley. Bradley was leaving it alone as per his father's advice, but he was also monitoring the situation at the same time. They were both still young, just 20 and 21, and from his understanding of their situation, the guy had bullied his mate all her life. Throughout primary and high school, also had accepted her rejection without hesitation when the girl had hurled it at him. She had screamed it right in the man's face in front of a crowd of her and his friends, and he'd yelled his acceptance right back at her. Bradley sighed. He'd seen Piper and her reaction to just his presence in her studio, at her store. She still felt their bond, had to, looked up to both Cooper and Eddie, who he knew were waiting on his response. "It's her," he muttered. "Piper Harper is Piper Whitlock. Her wolf's name is Harper. I'm guessing likely changed her name when she left the pack, would have been." He sighed. 21 when she left. That snapped Cooper's eyes wide. "Are you sure?" He sounded almost horrified, and Bradley knew why. "Yes," he nodded. "I'm guessing she likely knew all that time as well. Had masked herself from me the whole time." "That's insane, Brad. It would have killed her, especially seeing you and Bianca here in the pack. Not to mention when I wasn't in the pack." Bradley sighed heavily, hated that thought too. He was alpha-blooded and had not had a mate, as far as he knew, so had sated his needs when and wherever he pleased, with those that were willing, many times over those 3 years. "So what now, Brad?" his beta Cooper asked as he frowned deeply. "I don't know, co-op. She did reject me. I don't know anything about her at all. What's weird, I don't even recall her, but her file states I would have at least trained with her warrior class once a month. She was also 17 when I took over, so would have been right in front of me to accept her loyalty pledge. Hell, co-op. I would have had to call out her name, I don't." He tried to recall that day, but there were so many, a lot of wolves, a whole pack, I don't even remember her then. "What else have you got?" He knew that his beta was trying to jog his memory of her. "Nothing really. Piper Whitlock registered her own wolf, worked for Renee for 3.5 years. There is no registered guardians. Her parents would have died when she was like 10. She attended school all the way through, but I don't know. It's all just on paper, almost like. She just didn't exist to me ever. No photos, not her wolf after the age of 10. Weird." Cooped nodded. "Very weird. Do you recall her? You would have trained her warrior group when I couldn't." Watched his beta think on it, then shake his head no. "All I do know is that she did not like Hadley or I." "Well, that's easy to understand now. She likely thought that Hadley was my mate. Reacted as a previous mate would. But she did reject you." "So really," he shrugged. "I never accepted the rejection." Bradley shook his head. "How could I? I didn't even know she was out there. I never actually have accepted it, and Coop, I'm not likely to either. I want to know why my goddess-gifted mate hid from me all those years. Why she rejected me also." "Too much pain, Bradley." Coop offered. It was a logical explanation. "I don't believe that. Well, maybe in the end. But she stayed here, with that knowledge for 3 years. Why? Wouldn't you just confront and reject your mate when you found out if you didn't want your mate? Why wait and put up with all that pain for 3 full years?" "I don't know, only she knows, Brad." Cooper sighed with a shake of his head. Harry walked into his office. "No such luck, Brad. He'd been on a mission to get an appointment with Piper Harper. Her assistant said no to all the girls I had call. The minute they stated what company they work for, were refused an appointment." "They had to state what company they work for to get an appointment?" he asked, confused. "Apparently it's policy. I did have some of them ask about that. Even tried to get around Izzy by ringing the other stores. Same response, so it could well be the actual policy. Or a new one." Coop piped in. "To keep you away, Brad." "It was possible. Actively boycotting the pack then." Brad sighed. "Seems that way." Harry nodded. Brad's eyes moved to Eddie's. He'd been awfully quiet this whole time. He realized he'd not said one word since Renee had left. "What's wrong, Eddie?" he asked. The man was watching him now. "I kind of recognized her, Piper. At the store. Well, not her, just kind of." He shook his head. "I don't know. It's a bit hard to explain." He thought about it a little more. "I got this feeling from her, almost like I'd felt her before. Familiar, I guess you could say." "What? Why didn't you say anything?" "I couldn't put my finger on it, Brad. I did tell you once before, after she left I'd bad trouble with my gift for years. Sensed what I thought was pain. But you had no mate and I did try. I'm telling you, I couldn't find the one in pain. When I hunted, though mostly it was when we were away, would you have believed me at the time if I told you I thought your sleeping around was causing another pain?" Bradley stared at him. It was unlikely he would have believed him, not having scented her out and all. "Probably not," he admitted. "So what now?" Cooper asked. "We try and get to her, I guess. This Piper, she has 3 human world businesses. Got to be at one of them, right?" Bradley commented. "That is likely, but she'll smell wolves a mile away, and if she keeps her scent masked all the time and we can't get a decent picture of her, it's likely she'll walk right past our guys. She's only like about 5'6", wearing heels when I saw her, and passes for human easily. Doesn't look like a ripped she-wolf, or not that I could tell with her suit on anyway." "So, are we going with Piper Harper? Is your missing mate?" "Brad?" Harry asked. He'd been out of the room for all the details. Bradley looked at him. "Yes, she was a pack member. Changed her name. Here she would have been known as Piper Whitlock." "Whitlock, like as in Jewel Whitlock's daughter?" Harry asked right away. All eyes were on the man now. Where was this man half an hour ago? Chapter 9. Piper POV. Piper sat with Brandon in their hotel suite. Are you all right, Brandon? She finally got to ask him, too long after what had gone down out at the half-pipe, thanks to that bloody alpha, who'd not cared about the boy's mental state at all. Just about getting what he wanted, just like all alphas did. Saw him nod his head. Aspen apologized already. Aspen, is that your wolf? She asked. Again Brandon nodded. He just wanted to protect you. All right, how do you feel though? It must have been weird, frightening even. You only found out what you were yesterday. Brandon shook his head. Actually, Aspen's been talking to me for a while now. What? Piper asked, completely shocked by this revelation. How long is a while? About 6 months now, he shrugged. Why didn't you say anything? You must have thought terrible, horrible things. Not really. He looked right at her. I've seen your eyes change color a lot, and Aspen told me. He was my inner self. He's seen Harper, told me we were just like you. That one day my eyes would be able to change too. I'm so sorry, Brandon. If I had known, I would have told you much sooner. It's all right. I understand why you didn't. That man, that woman, they're all mean. You're not like them. I can be Brandon, she admitted honestly, not to humans, but I am very much mean to my own kind. It's hard to explain. It's all right, you don't have to now. Any questions you have, I will try to answer them honestly, but can they wait until we get home? Or away from this place? He nodded. Are they all wolves, all those people, the big men? He asked her. Yes, she nodded. You'll likely grow up to be big like them. You'll need to learn. Sighed. To fight. It is wolves' nature to fight for dominance and control. Aspen is very young, but actively challenged a fully grown wolf today. Not a good thing. He could have accepted, and if so, by law, wolf-in-law. Goddess. She did not want to think about that at all. Saw Brandon look right at her. Registered actual fear in his expression. He knew or guessed. Piper pulled him into a hug and sighed. You have to try and control Aspen. It will be difficult due to what he is. But if you two can come to a mutual understanding, it will be easier. What is he? She heard the worry in his voice. His type of wolf, I mean. Wolves don't normally appear this early. Not till, for your type of wolf, 13 or so. Most don't get their wolves until 16, so Aspen is very early. Is that a bad thing? He asked. No, not a bad thing, just a surprise is all. She looked down at him and reassured him. We should go to that man. I don't want us to get in trouble, Mum, he told her. All right, we'll talk more at home, okay? She agreed. She too did not want to incur Alpha Timothy's wrath. They arrived 15 minutes early to the room, written on the paper. Alpha Timothy opened the door himself, smiled right at her and Brandon, all friendly like, come on in, even sounded happy to see her. She knew better. He was not to be trusted. Not considering he was blackmailing her into working on her weekend away, when all his daughter had to do was call the damned store and schedule an appointment with her. Piper sat at the suite's dining room table, with the man's daughter. Celeste was her name. Piper was listening to the girl who was describing the dress she wanted and making notes. It was a bit difficult to concentrate, due to Alpha Timothy sitting on the lounge in the living area next to Brandon. It was a good 20 feet away. She'd never get there in time if that Alpha opted to hurt her son. She kept looking over at them worriedly. I'm not going to hurt your boy, Piper. He commented after the 5th time she'd looked over there. I'm just curious is all. She still didn't like it, neither did Harper for that matter, and her wolf hearing was tuned into Alpha Timothy and Brandon, which also didn't help her focus on Celeste's ideas for her dress. Celeste was watching her sketch and huffed, a few times stating, it's not what I pictured, and made Piper start again. After the 4th restart, Piper sighed, all right, Celeste, can you possibly sketch even roughly what it looks? Perhaps that will help me to help you get what it is you want. Oh, I think so. The girl smiled at her and took the offered pencil and pad of drawing paper. It would usually help if they knew what they wanted, and Piper could work from just about any sketch given to her. She could usually tweak it and make it her own while giving them the desired dress they wanted. Will I be making this dress? Or just designing it? She turned her eyes to Alpha Timothy questioningly. He'd only said she had to design it. Saw him look right at her. I guess that is up to Celeste. He smiled right at her. She held in an irritated sigh and turned her eyes back to Celeste. The girl she could see, unfortunately, did not have a single artistic bone in her body, and the sketch she produced was not good at all. Piper held in the heavy sigh of frustration that was trying to escape her when the girl handed it to her, smiling at her. "Alpha, this might go a bit easier and quicker if my son was next to me," she told him honestly. "Well, I'll order us all some dinner, and you can design while we all eat." It was not what she meant or wanted, but she had no choice. He was calling all the shots at the moment. The man ordered food. A lot of it, even made sure that Brandon had more than one meal to eat, even encouraged the boy to eat more, told him he was a growing wolf and needed to eat lots. "Piper, may I ask your wolf to present herself to me?" Alpha Timothy asked her halfway through his meal. She felt Harper bristle inside her mind, did not like the request at all. Neither did Piper for that matter. She is not interested. Piper told him truthfully, "Why do you want that?" "I'm curious." Piper sighed. She'd not eaten anything, even though he had provided her with a meal as well. She was not at all hungry, was just trying to get the dress design that the girl wanted, but the sketch was terrible. Had these weird zigzag lines over the shoulders and then flicks of lines all over the skirt area. Piper did not know what they meant and had to inquire, also did not know what all the dots on the dress were either. Looked like a 2-year-old had drawn it if she was honest with herself. Apparently the zigzags were ruffles, and the flicked lines were feathers, and the dots were crystal beading. Looking at the sketch, it kind of made more sense to her now. Was trying to design something similar. "Curious about what?" Piper asked as she started a whole new sketch. A fitted bodice with an inbuilt corset and pretty beading all over it. It was fitted all the way to the hips as per the detail she had already gotten. Her eyes. Alpha Timothy finally replied as he finished his meal. "Same as Brandon's," she stated flatly, not willing to force Harper forward. Didn't even look at him, put the layers of ruffles on the sleeve of the dress as per Celeste's idea and then penciled in a feathered skirt, turned it to Celeste and saw her nod. But then was still frowning. "I don't like the sleeves." Neither did Piper, for that matter. "How about you let me adjust that part for you? Are you open to some minor changes?" Saw Celeste nod slowly. Used another page to design a different style top for the dress, instead of a scooped neckline, with spaghetti straps that had ruffles coming off of it. She made it a square neckline with a sheer-fitted bolero-style top. Only pinned at the edge of the shoulder, and then allowed the material to flow down off the shoulder to a short bell sleeve that stopped at the middle of her upper arm, edged it with a nice white satin ribbon, not a ruffle, but still flowing material. It looked much better. Turned the sketch to the girl and saw her actually smile and then nod her head. The back she made much the same, but had a slit and just one button to hold the sheer fabric in place, and then used the same ribbon to have the dress lace up the back instead of buttons or zipper. Brandon sat next to her at the table. Even when the meal was over, she drew up the front and back in full and then the top of the dress separately as well, with more detail on the bodice, and was finally done. Handed her sketches to Celeste, who frowned again. "What's wrong with it now?" Piper asked, somewhat annoyed with the girl, and couldn't keep that annoyance out of her voice. The girl had been happy with it previously, now it seemed not to be. "You didn't put your signature on it." Piper raised an eyebrow. "Give it back," she stated, and the girl did. She signed Piper Harper to the sketches, saw the girl light up instantly and showed her father, watched as the man smiled right back at her. "What do you say, Celeste?" "Thank you, Piper, it's beautiful. I'm going to go and call Mum," and then she was gone from the table, taking the sketches with her. Piper raised an eyebrow. She had been forced to come here and design that dress, and she was certain she was going to be forced to make it as well at some point, so didn't understand why she said thank you. Or why her father made her say it, for that matter. It was made only because he'd threatened her into it. Not out of the goodness of her heart. "May I go now?" Piper stated flatly. "Yes, Piper, thank you for helping. My daughter has no talent for design, and no one in my pack has understood what she wants. She saw you and begged me to have you design her dress. Told me you would be the one to understand her." Piper said nothing, just wanted to leave. She did not care for his explanation at all. It was late, and she wanted nothing more than to get away from this man and his threat. She'd done what he asked now. stood and took Brandon's hand to lead him out of the suite. Alpha Timothy followed her all the way. "Oh, one more thing," he stated as she stepped away from his door. She turned and looked at him, her jaw tightened, saw him just smile all charmingly at her. He knew she was more than annoyed and didn't care in the slightest. "Good night, Piper, Whitlock." That snapped her head up and widened her eyes. She did not go by Whitlock in the human world. How had he known that her last name was Whitlock? Heard him chuckle and saw his eyes practically glitter with amusement. "If you ever need help, Piper, my pack is open to you and your son. Always. So keep my details." She wanted to ask him how he knew that, but did not. Just turned and walked away. It was likely Aspen's eyes. It was a hereditary trait. "Piper," he called out to her, "I really mean that. You'd be safe inside my pack." She glanced back at him briefly but said nothing, continued on walking away. He'd threatened her to get what he wanted today, and now he was telling her she'd be safe in his pack. That was very unlikely. She did not understand him, didn't like that he actually knew who she was either. Likely just wanted his pack to benefit from her profit margin. He would take a slice of it, and likely a large slice at that. "Mom," Brand asked once inside their own suite, "how'd he know our last name?" "I'm not sure, other than your birth certificate and schooling, the house and the car. We go by Harper." She was frowning. It had to be his and her wolf's eyes that gave it away. Her mother always told her, no matter what, keep the Whitlock name. It was important. So when she'd had Brandon, even though she was going by Harper then, she'd put Whitlock on his human birth certificate, written unknown as the father. Not that the humans cared about his lineage. "Pack," she told him, "we'll leave first thing." Brandon didn't say anything, just went and packed his stuff up. Likely he'd wanted to get away from here as well now. Checked her flight time. They were or had been going to have a late checkout and go boarding again in the morning before leaving for home. So their flight wasn't till later afternoon. Couldn't it seemed get an earlier one, so was just going to have to deal with it. They could hang out in the airport, she supposed. Sat on her bed and Googled how long it would take them to drive home instead. 7.5 hours. Be quicker to drive than wait on their flight. Organized a rental car and would suck it up and lose money on their airfares. Found Brandon standing next to her bed looking up at her. She smiled at him. "Climb in. I thought we could drive home tomorrow. We can leave early." "Okay." He nodded as he got up on the bed. Piper settled him in the bed and lay down next to him, brushed his hair away from his face. "Are you scared, Brandon?" she asked softly. "No, but... Are you mad at Aspen? He got us into trouble." Piper pulled him into a hug. "No. Aspen is very brave. Harper and I are very proud of him, to be honest." She kissed the top of his head. "Just needs a little better timing is all." She stayed awake and ran her hand through his hair until he fell asleep, then finished making the car rental arrangements, before settling herself down to sleep as well. Chapter 10. Bradley POV. "What do you mean Hadley is missing?" Bradley frowned as he listened to his father on the other end of the line. Saw his whole unit turn and look at him as well. Cooper actually stood up, looked more than shocked. They were all back in Portland, had been now for 2 days. "Her car is not here, Bradley. No one has seen her in a whole day, not since she went to bed last night, not at breakfast either." He could hear the worry in his father Benjamin's voice. "She's not just gone out shopping with her friends? Left early this morning to beat the rush hour traffic?" Bradley asked, "When was the exact last time you saw her?" "When she went to bed. Was already up and gone from the suite before Lily and I woke up. We thought she was off at training, but no, she didn't attend it this morning. I already checked that." Bradley was frowning now. "I presume you called her." "I'm not an idiot, son. Of course I called her, so did Lily. We have both called her a dozen times now, talked to all her friends. No one has seen her." "Who's out looking for her?" "Your brothers, me, and my whole unit. Everyone in the pack knows to report if they see her. She is not here, missing." There was actual fear in the man's voice now. "I told you to LoJack the girl's car, father. She is too pretty. A snatcher's dream." He was now worried himself though. Hadley was such a sweet-natured girl. She was innocent and wanted to believe that there was only good in everyone. It's why he'd sent her out here with his entire unit, in fact. To protect her. "I'll call her." "Has she picked up at all?" No, it goes right to the message bank. He could already see Eddie was on it, calling her. Hang on, Eddie is ringing her now. They all waited patiently till Eddie shook his head. No luck. We'll keep searching, son, but… She was her father's little girl, his only daughter in fact, and everyone loved Hadley. He sighed. I'll send my unit back to help with the search. I have to stay though. No, son, don't do that. You all need to be there. Just thought she might have turned up there. Keep an eye out for her, will you? What? Why would Hadley be out here? Piper upset her completely. I know that, son. But she was more concerned that Piper ran away from you and thinks it's all her fault. Was talking to Lily about it last night before going to bed, worried she'd screwed up your mate Bond. Bradley shook his head and huffed at his father. Well, maybe you should lead with that, he muttered, annoyed. Now we'll search here. He hung up. You think she came out here to try and convince Piper to come home? Cooper sighed. Oh, I know she did. She apparently believes what she and her wolf, Letty, picked up on was Piper's reaction to seeing me with another. She did come and apologize to me for scaring the woman off before we left. He could only shake his head again. Bradley had tried to convince her that she was wrong, told her a bit of the truth, that Piper had used to be a pack member, but that was it. Told her that Piper was likely just scared to see her old beta and alpha was all. Though she had not believed him at all, she had stood there and raised a delicately sculpted eyebrow at him and then repeated his own words back to him. It's not fear, it's pain. Didn't miss a thing, that girl. Was going to make an excellent lawyer. On it. Cooper was dialing a number a minute later. Got a no, I didn't see her or her car leave beta. Cooper was not so dumb, shook his own head. The girl, who was all sweet, was also very intelligent, intending to follow her father's footsteps and go to law school. Did Hadley, Alpha, order you to say that you hadn't seen her or her car? He asked in return. Was talking to the night gate guard. Bradley sighed, knew as soon as he heard Coop ask the question the answer was going to be yes, and he was not wrong. What time did she put the order on you? Cooper asked again. He knew how to question and interrogate. Thank the goddess you asked beta. The guard actually sounded relieved to be being questioned. It was 3 in the morning. I'm sorry. Not your fault. Hadley is very bright. He hung up. The guard would not be punished. He was under an alpha's order not to tell, so he physically couldn't. Poor bastard sounded like he was worried as much as the rest of the pack. 3 a.m. Bradley looked at the time now. It was nearly 7 p.m. It was a 13-hour drive without stops for eating and using the bathroom, and father did drum into all his children the stop, revive, and survive policy for driving. A break from driving every 2 hours to stop the monotony of staring at the road and causing fatigue. Hadley would likely only just be getting here now. Let's watch the use of her pack credit card. She'll have to book into a hotel at some point. Harry agreed to track the girl's card. His laptop was already out, so not an issue. Eddie took one of their rental cars to go and drive around to actually look for her car. Bradley put in a call to her himself. She wasn't likely to ignore him. It would get her punished. Not that he thought his father wasn't going to round on the girl about being young and alone, an unmated alpha female alone and vulnerable. She did train, but hated to fight. It was not in her nature to sweet like her mother Lily was. Lily had been an Omega before she met his father, still had a submissive nature and was eager to please, even 19 years later. Had been an Omega for 40 years before meeting his father, not so easy to grow out of, she'd once told him. Just like Hadley was sweet-natured, liked to be helpful, didn't like to be a burden, and usually did exactly what she was told. The only difference was that Hadley did have alpha blood, and could be, at times, defiant and strong-willed. Though only where things were important to her and if she felt guilty about Piper Harper or Piper Whitlock, as he now knew, that was her real name. This could well have set off Hadley's defiant nature and combined that with her need to help others. He sighed when he got her voicemail like everyone else did. Hadley, it's Bradley. You will call me back when you get this message. Or I will be personally searching for you, he told her. Hadley knew that he was out here in Portland trying to get Piper to talk to him, not that he or his unit had even laid eyes on the woman. It had been 2 days and only Izzy and some other human women were working in the store. He and his unit had stayed out of sight, or he and Cooper had due to the fact that Izzy would recognize both of them. Eddie and Harry had strolled on by the store a few times. The woman's office was closed up and the lights were out, as it had been on Saturday, when he had last been in the store. No such luck, and it was now Wednesday night. The store had been closed up by Izzy at 17:30 on the dot, just like the day before. Opening hours were 0900 to 17:30. That's what the golden lettering on the door stated, and Izzy was prompt to open and close up. Eddie had offered to snag a human and stroll in there to suss this Izzy out, but Bradley got the distinct impression Izzy was not stupid and would see through it. His gamma was just as big and muscled up as his beta was. And he'd had people calling all weekend trying to get an appointment. Eddie was full of charm, literally could charm any woman with the acceptation of his mate when he found her. But he was also what humans would call damn good-looking, and Izzy, he thought, would hazard a guess as to Eddie being one of Bradley's men. Considering the amount of calls he'd had put in, and that Piper had shut him down, this Izzy would likely be on the lookout for anything that was out of the ordinary or even slightly suspicious. So now they were waiting. Piper Harper was a bit of a mystery. Owned 3 stores and nothing else, not even a house in her name, no car in her name, and all her stores and the land they were on were all purchased through her company, Piper Harper Designs. There was no company car that he'd seen, and none registered to this store. Both the store managers of her 2 other stores had company cars. Izzy did not, and he had no idea if Piper Harper owned a car at all. No car registered to one Piper Harper that he could find. She had changed her name when she had left the pack. That was all he knew, though every Piper Harper he'd tracked down to an address was not her, and there were only 5 Piper Harpers in Portland, and not one of them had been the one he was looking for. She had hidden herself not just in the pack, but had also taken great lengths to hide herself out here within the human world as well, it seemed. It was odd. He didn't like it. His father had freaked him out a bit, telling him that Whitlocks were few and far between, that she would be in danger out here all alone, that he had to get back out here to Portland and bring her back to the pack as soon as possible. Had not really elaborated, but his actually worry and concern over the girl had shown through in full. So here he was back in Portland trying to track a lone she-wolf, who constantly masked her scent, which he supposed she did now to protect herself from those that would kidnap and sell off a lone rogue female. At least she'd been safe all this time, and was well known in the human world. If she went missing, Izzy would report her missing. He was certain of that. There would be a statewide search for sure. That brought his thoughts around to the fact that he just couldn't go and snatch the woman off the street himself. He was going to have to find a way to get her to agree to come with him. Maybe he could get her to tell Izzy she was taking a trip or something. He wondered if he could actually get Piper to agree to date him for a bit. He didn't know, could only ask, he supposed. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. There it was, Hadley's number. "Where are you?" he grated out. Didn't even bother to state hello, "Father is worried sick." "I just went for a drive. Heading home now," she told him calmly. He didn't believe her. "So where did you drive to?" "I've been in Helena all day. Just shopping, watched a movie," she answered him. "I don't believe you, Hadley. Not considering you left my pack at 3 in the morning." He spoke to her, his alpha tone rolling out of him, not as her brother, but as her alpha. Got silence from the other end of the line. "We have ways of getting answers, Hadley." That poor guard, he sighed. He would use her sweet nature against her. "You didn't hurt him," she whispered, sounding mortified to his ear. "What do you think it takes to get past an alpha order?" he commented, saw both Cooper and Harry shake their heads at his tactics, but also smile at the same time. "I don't believe you. You're not even there in the pack," she suddenly snapped at him, her alpha genes kicking in. "No, but Father is, and he's much more hot-headed than I am, you know this." That poor guard. He sighed sadly. "You'll really have some apologizing to do to his mate and his 2 children when you get home." "No," she sounded more than horrified now. "Tell me where you are," he asked her softly. "Bradley, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean. I just, oh you bastard." She suddenly snapped those last 3 words at him, and the line was disconnected. Heard both Cooper and Harry laugh, but it was Cooper who stated, "Oh, she's onto you and your tricks." Ah, it was worth a shot. Used to work on her all the time. Bradley smiled to himself. Guess she is not so little anymore. He dialed his father's number. The girl when little had been easily swayed into talking by her guilt. Not so much anymore, it seemed. Damned alpha genes, but at least she was all right and had not been kidnapped at this point. I spoke to Hadley. She sounded fine. I nearly got her to tell me where she is. I'm bedding here in Portland, trying to find Piper Harper to clear things up. Heard his father sigh. It is her nature to fix things. Eddie's out now looking. We're tracking her pack card. She hasn't used it yet, though. She must have cash on her. That would be my doing. I've always told her to carry cash in case of an emergency. How much is she likely to be carrying? A couple hundred, his father informed him. Just bloody great. Bradley muttered, so we'll hunt 2 missing she-wolves going under the radar. He snapped and hung up before his father could even retort. Hadley has cash, a couple $100, he told Harry, so she won't need that card until she runs out of cash. I'll continue to monitor anyway. Bradley was tempted to cancel it, but he didn't want her running into any trouble if it was declined. She'll need it to book accommodation, even if she pays cash. Doesn't mean the hotel will run it right away. Harry commented. He already knew this, but there was nothing he could do about it. Eddie was out looking. It was unlikely Hadley would stay in her car or some dingy hotel. No, she was used to staying in very nice accommodation. It was likely she would go to a larger, more respectable hotel, and they would insist on her credit card and likely swipe it right away. Seeing as how young she was, they would want assurance she could afford the room. Though she was driving a nice new BMW convertible which her father had given her for her 17th birthday, when she'd officially gotten her driver's license, she'd not needed a big hulk of a car, was small and petite like her mother was. He and his unit were booked into the Nines, a luxury collection hotel, here in Portland, and had booked out 4 of their 1-bedroom king suites. His had a nice corner view. Though they were all in his suite talking and planning when not out there sitting and waiting on Piper to return to her store, which was only a 30-minute drive from where they were staying. Eddie strolled in the door, pulling Hadley behind him 2 hours after he'd spoken with the girl. Look at what I found at the Hilton. He smiled. Thought I'd stake out your father's favorite hotel chain. Bradley stared right at her. You are in so much trouble. He let his displeasure about her disappearance known. Sit your ass in that chair. He snapped his fingers at the couch in his room. She looked suitably guilty to him. He put in a video call to his father. He answered right away. We got her, he told him, and then turned the phone around to show her to him. Hadley looked at the phone, took it even as their father was already yelling at her about how irresponsible she was, how dangerous it was for a young alpha female to be out there on her own. Bradley watched as she sat quietly and took the tongue lashing from their father, just nodded when she should and apologized too. Then, and only then, did his father calm down and tell her she'd scared him and her mother half to death, that they'd thought the worst had happened. Let her actually talk to her mother Lily. Told her she had better do everything, absolutely everything Bradley and the unit told her to do, or she would be severely punished when she got home. Bradley didn't believe that last part, but it did look like Hadley believed it. His father had the biggest soft spot for the girl. A severe punishment likely just meant being grounded to her bedroom for a day or 2, and that room had everything she could ever want in it anyway. He took the phone back from Hadley and spoke briefly to his father, said he'd have one of his men drive her back tomorrow. Saw Hadley actually pout, but it was his father that had his attention. Just keep her there, son. Don't lessen your chances of getting to Piper. It's very important she is brought in. Hadley's punishment can wait. Bradley was surprised, but didn't object. Put a few rules on his little wayward sister's. 1. That she had to stay here in the suite. 2. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone, as it wasn't safe to do so. 3. If she left the suite without permission, she would be spending time in the cells back at home. For every minute she left the suite, there would be a minute in the cells. It was more of a threat, used in the hope she would actually stay put. The look on her face said it all. She was horrified by the thought of it, and also seemed like she actually did believe him too. He was staring right down at her. His jaw was set and his tone harsh. He was all alpha, not brother. Saw her glance at Cooper as though he was going to save her, got nothing and just nod her head and even stated, "Yes, Bradley." "Oh, and you will be sleeping on that couch. I am not giving up my bed for you," he told her, saw her pout right up at him. Give him that look from her big blue eyes that always got her way. Tossed her a pillow and a spare blanket to make his point. One she-wolf found, though she had not really been hiding. One she-wolf to go. That was in fact hiding from him right this minute.